Okay, evening, everybody. We're sorry to keep you waiting. You know how we are, fashionably late, but we are very, very fortunate in this international break not just to have one great guest, but an even, am I allowed to say even greater? Actually, Andy might get really sort of hassle me for saying that. Another great guest, uh, Baker. How are you this evening?
Oh, very well, boys. Very well. It's been, yeah, it feels like a really long break. It feels like a really long break. It feels longer for me, I suppose, because I'm completely reliant on Adam to do any form of podding, and he's not around. So therefore, I've been sitting around thinking, what am I going to do with this once? And then on the weekend, I was like, boys, if you need someone,
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
need someone, I'm available. I will whore myself out for you boys anytime.
No, well, it's much nicer to be, guest, handed glasses of wine and beers
I
and
offered that. Let's be honest. This was like, as everyone wonders, you didn't have to ask. I was like, please.
No, it's very kind of you. It's nice. And I mean, before we go, we should say, by the way, if you're wondering what we were up to whilst we were waiting in the green room, um, Baker and I, we probably had at least a good 5 to 10 minute chat about cardigans. We have,
Yeah,
both a mutual interest. I'm a little bit more of the sort of pocketed variety. So
yeah. I'm
I'll
not the
show you this
pocketed
one.
man.
It's kind of a dark, kind of olive green number
That's
there.
one of three
Very, very warm.
pockets. We should point out that's one of three pockets on that cardigan.
Yeah, there's one on the inside here as well.
Four pockets.
Yeah, yeah, it is four actually. Yeah, that's too many, isn't it? Yeah,
Four pockets, Richie.
it's not as bad though. I have a particular thing about items of clothing where they have a zip that doesn't actually work. You know, occasionally you have a zip that doesn't go anywhere. That's my particular bugbear. But I
Yeah.
have three colours of this cardigan, so if anyone's interested, pop me a DM. I'll let you know where you can get one of these bad boys. But there you go. Sorry, Danny, I've been keeping you waiting, but I wanted to sort of allow you to kind of warm up. How are you this evening? How are you doing? Are you all settled and ready to go?
I'm not going to lie. After just what I've just shown you, boys, I'm never. I apologise for being late as usual. I've got major problems, but yeah, no, I'm feeling good. I'm glad. I'm very glad Baker's here. I mean, I didn't know. Obviously, me and Baker talk pretty much every day, and I didn't know Adam was away, so he didn't have to offer himself. If I'd have known that, I'd have said, I know he needs his fix, so I'd have said, get on ours before he even had to. But yeah, no, it's good. And I'm very glad he's here because I'm so scrambled, and it'll help us like lead the conversation, like just like Andy did on Friday, which was great. So yeah, good.
We should say, can you say happy holiday to people? That sounds a bit weird, isn't it? Well, I hope you're having a lovely holiday, Adam. Is it Turkey or Tunisia? I don't know why I've made Tunisia a
Turkey.
thing.
But no one really
Clearly
means
Turkey.
that, do you? No one really wants anyone to have a nice holiday. When you're not there, like, especially if it was a bit cold today, and I was like, I don't want it to be
Yeah.
nice out there. I don't really wish.
If anyone
It's like saying
hasn't
we
checked,
wish people a good week. You know what I mean? We all say every week, good luck this week, everyone. No one really means it.
or when you're younger and like a friend of yours suddenly starts going out with a really good looking girl, it's like, oh
Well
yeah,
done,
well
mate.
done, mate. Really pleased for you, mate. Yeah. But it's if anyone hasn't seen it, by the way, make sure you get on the kind of above average socials, because that the picture of I don't know how to describe it. I should have put it in the slide deck, but Adam kind of by the pool with teeth and hair and glasses. Did you do that, Baker? It's
I
great.
did not do that. Someone in our Patreon did. It's the IB for final boss. Richie, are you too classy for the IB for final boss? Because me and Danny are not.
I kind of
You are, aren't
see.
you? You don't really know who the IB for final boss is, do you?
I don't know what's going on really.
I don't think Richie's. I don't think he's got TikTok. I don't think Richie's TikTok level. Maybe you have. Have you got a secret TikTok? I
I'm
don't
not
know, but that's
entirely sure I can actually get into it, to tell you the truth. Put it this way: when I allowed, when I hit the kind of link to allow Baker into the room, so to speak, I still had some Scott Walker records playing. So that's kind of my level.
Yeah, we're not that way.
No Ibiza here, but no, please do explain.
So basically, there was a guy. He's made literally like millions in like the last 6-7 weeks or so, probably, of life. But there was a guy dancing at Ocean Beach, who looks well. He is that person that you saw that Adam was made to look like, with sort of Lego type hair, the teeth, all that stuff, and someone on TikTok put it out and said, like, I found the Ibiza final boss, and that was it. Just went viral from there.
Nice.
And yes, someone when Adam was on holiday posing by the beach, painted on the hair, the glasses, and
Great.
there you go.
Well, I will try and improve my social skills and socials skills and get interesting pictures of Danny out there.
Was there a documentary, Baker? Did you send me that? Because I ended up watching some sort of documentary on him not long ago.
I think it was YouTube. I don't know if it was a commission. Oh no, I think there is. Yeah, I actually think there is. There is something about, I think, like the marketing agency of how they, said that they were going to play him.
Yeah, I watched
there is actually a documentary.
Yeah, I did watch something for about 10 minutes, and about him, having to make the most.
Is that why you were late? You were watching that?
No, that was a whole different story. Jesus Christ. For those who don't know, I've just spent the last 2 hours thinking about. I've got problems basically. I've realised this in later life that I've got kind of attention problems, and I've been at home all day doing nothing, pretending to work, and I thought, I'm going to be here nice and early, and I'm going to be ready for Baker just in case he's ready early, and we'll go and get it done. And then I just said before I came on, I was thinking about Nick Woltemade, and I went into this deep thought that lasted for about an hour and a half, and then I'd completely lost track of time. Wasn't dressed, everything all over the place, hadn't eaten any dinner. And so then that's why I'm late. That's why we're late, basically. It's entirely my fault today, as it usually is. So I'm relying entirely on you guys for topic points. But what were we just talking about? We were talking about the... Oh, yeah.
Great. It's like the method acting version of FPL podcasters. Just get naked and think about Nick Woltemade for 2 hours.
Yeah. Oh God, I've forgotten what we were talking about. The Ibiza dude. Yeah, whatever I was going to say. I'm scrambled. I need you boys to settle in here. I'm scrambled.
No, that's right. Yeah, I know what Baker means. By the way, you've got the kind of you're the Daniel Day-Lewis of FPL podcasts. So you'll be on set for 3 months and you won't say hello to anyone properly because you'll just be so in the zone and so focused on your job that you won't kind of bother. I should say hello to our lovely people in the chat because, of course, they deserve lots of praise for sticking around for a little while. A lot of them are mentioning about traitors. Look, just put it on iPlayer in an hour. Yeah, it's cool. Yeah. It's fine. We're in that territory. Sorry, Dan. Danny's like, I might leave in half an hour. Please don't stick around and that sort of thing. But yeah. Actually, we've got some mutual friends in here. Pranil is in tonight. We want Danny impressions. So he's in tonight, enjoying himself as well. Someone actually kind of got my Scott Walker reference by saying, I bet you have no regrets. Very good, Com. I know what you're saying there, and someone else doesn't. So that's what can you do? Anyway,
with the Netherlands 1988 Euro shirt there, was that? On his profile picture.
Oh yeah, I think he did actually. Yeah, that is a classy number actually.
Absolutely stunner.
Good. Well, yeah, Nick Woltemade is the kind of player who would inspire that level of kind of focus actually, and he is very tall, as we've discussed this, Danny. We've got some more height references tonight. I've got some disappointment in Jurrien Timber, but we'll talk about that later. I haven't quite recovered after finding out his height earlier. I'm not happy about it.
How tall is he?
I've got to save that for later. I can't go steaming in here with Jurrien Timber's height. We'll keep it in your head, whatever you want to guess in centimeters or in feet and inches, and we'll hit it a bit later on. Oh, Nikolai's on the Amsterdam port. Very nice. That sounds quite pleasant. I think I'll have one of those as well. Okay, just quick word, some bit of housekeeping, because someone actually specifically replied to the tweet and asked me to mention this, so they must be in the top 10 or something. I've only mentioned the top 6, but Last Resort Mini League, if you're still in for that thing, the code is LZKI6K if you're on audio. Not too late to join for what you got, probably a couple of months. John Hilton is top. Paulie Essen's been knocked down to 2, and our old friend Johnny Eggs, he's been knocked out of the top 5, so he must be devastated. I've put a special effort as well to recognise the player of the week. So Mike Cox, which I very almost turned into a joke. I'm not going to. Barocca Juniors, 97 points. That's proper. So well done, Mike Cox. I'm assuming you must need a chip for that, but there you go. Actually, chip talk. I did use one last week. I've managed to luck out. I got 2 points more than my bench boost for last year. I got 8. So terrific result there. Baker's on it this week, so hopefully, or might be on it. Are you kind of 100% there?
Yeah, well, yeah.
You are on it. Okay, so we're going to be talking that up a little bit later on. We're going to dig pretty much straight into some questions and dilemmas this week, and then we'll talk about the fixtures and our teams. But it's fairly straightforward tonight. Lots of kind of talk about our own teams, that sort of thing. But to start with, we'll talk about dilemmas. I want to start with the first one, which is quite a broad, overarching questions, which is just about, from our perspective, which assets could become popular who are not popular right now. And the sort of second element to that question is, if we save transfers now, who are the players who could become great differentials? I'm just going to take one issue, though, with that. Obviously, I'm guessing the person who asked the question probably didn't mean who could become popular. You know, popularity for popularity's sake is probably not what they meant, but like who could become someone of great interest over the next kind of weeks. So give Danny a few more minutes. So I'm going to start with yourself, Baker. I mean, is it Nick Woltemade who's going to taking up all Danny's thoughts, or does anyone else spring to mind for people that you think are going to take a lot of attention over the next few weeks with the changing fixtures and that sort of thing?
I think Woltemade is possible, definitely. But you know, I wouldn't want to take that away from Danny to tell us through, because he's obviously fought it through a lot longer, harder than we have.
No, this is the amazing thing. I spent all that time thinking, and I decided that I couldn't say anything on him. Anyway, we'll get to that. But sorry, go on, Baker. I have problems.
Oh, I don't know. You know, I definitely think, like, once we go past this week, I've had no Man United players. Actually, it's a lie. I had Cunha for 1 week. That was what I did. Bought him in, captained him, and out you went. But that's my only Man United all season. And I think after this week, it's a long time where it's all right. It's all right. Your next, you know, is obviously is Man City at home in game week 22, but through to that time, no Europe, no Carabao. It would seem weird to not have them, and they're not cheap, really. I mean, Sesko could be quite cheap, like from a striker perspective. So that's definitely somebody is in my mind of a striker. Probably will just play every single week. Definitely is someone there. I still think I've really struggled all season. I've really struggled to pick Bruno because I just don't like the position for him.
Yeah.
I like Boomo, but you know, even just watching him last week, like with Ahmad, they dovetail so much that you're like, I don't know which one I want all the time. But I definitely don't really want the one that's potentially playing right wing back some of the time. But I also don't want, you know, when there was no Ahmad, it's all really Boomo on that right hand side, and then suddenly it's not so much. So yeah, they're Man United are definitely the ones that I'm looking at of which one of those. Might be
I think that's a good place to start. I think I'll come to Danny in just a second, but it's funny, but I instantly thought to myself that I was probably going to be talking a little bit about the team who's mentioned second on the kind of set of questions there, Liverpool, and maybe even to an extent Crystal Palace. But actually, strangely enough, I have a suspicion based on kind of what I've seen through the people's teams that are being put out there during this international break, that it's probably going to be, and this is something I'll talk about later on, it's probably going to be the Arsenal asset that you don't have. And I can see a lot of that at the moment. Now, for example, I think a lot of the chat, to be fair, a few of them mentioned, are already a bit more excited about Eze because, you know, understandably with the Ødegaard injury, what's he out for a good sort of 8-10 weeks, something like that, possibly. It's a bit of a debate, isn't it? No one knows for absolutely certain. So that's going to become quite popular, save a bit cheaper, obviously, than other attacking assets. So that's an interesting one. For me, I've spent whatever Danny did with Woltemade earlier today. I've spent kind of the best part of 2 weeks getting a sort of gradual. Actually, I can't say that phrase on the pod because it would probably get us banned. But getting very excited about the prospect of Timber or being in my team when he's not currently, and that would involve a little bit of Arsenal jiggery pokery. I think, yeah, simple answer, and it's a little bit of a, I don't know whether it's boring or not really, but it's quite a bold move to have to switch them around. It requires multiple transfers. So I'm going to kind of say that the Arsenal players that you don't have, which is where I'm leaning at the moment. Danny, is it Big Nick?
I mean, not necessarily. I spent far too long thinking about Nick Woltemade. I won't explain why. I mean, it's just I've got major problems. But it wasn't necessarily that I sort of decided he was. I was trying to sort of, because I think on the last pod I just sort of, I don't remember what I said really, but I think we mentioned it and him, and I sort of said, because I'd only just watched Match of the Day or something when we podded on Friday with Andy or something like that, so it's kind of fresh in my mind, and I was sort of saying, because I don't really like that. I don't really like to hear everyone's opinion and then watch Match of the Day. I usually like to absorb what I think and then listen. So it was a bit of back to front last week where I sort of heard all these opinions and then I watched it. It was quite interesting actually, because it forms your opinion before you've watched something. So, and then I watched, because this is what reminded me. It's like, so there's been seasons gone past where sometimes you forget to do things like watch Match of the Day, and it depends on your style of play and how you some people prefer to just use models and not watch any games or whatever. And my particular style of play, I do like to watch football and I do like to see certain things. It's just kind of the way I think. So I like to sort of play to my strengths. And it was such a good reminder actually that, hang on a minute, just watch the football, because you might see, it doesn't mean you're right or wrong, but you just might see things that to you make sense completely differently to anyone else. And to me, watching Woltemade, I mean, you've gone there. I didn't even want to go there because I've just been so scrambled. But let's go there. But to me, watching Woltemade, like, there were some huge boxes ticked for me, and I couldn't. The reason I was thinking about it was just thinking I can't explain this really without sounding like a bit of a tosser, or just not sort of explaining it in the right way. But it was just, especially when you haven't seen much of a player before, there are certain big boxes that might need ticking for me with a player, in just terms of how they play, how they think, whether they're kind of a player that thinks consciously too much, or looks nervous, or looks like he's worried about his performance, or this and that. And when I saw Match of the Day this week, I don't know how much I've seen of Woltemade really, to be honest. Probably have a bit, but I just saw a guy who just was completely focused on the task. Let me just try and, I had something, I can't remember where I've got it. So, yeah, like, I just saw a guy who was completely like in the zone. Like, it's hard to explain. In fact, I'll come back to Woltemade.
He's got a huge amount of swagger about him. In the summer, in the under-21, in Germany, it just obviously he just looks like big fish in a small pond because he's so massive. But it's different to that. There's that sort of like Ibrahimovic, I'm bigger than you in every single way, and I'm better than you in every single way type thing about him, that you can imagine him growing into that kind of player. There's something there, definitely.
Yeah, I think the main thing was watching him, and thanks for that, Baker, because I can't sort of, it's difficult to describe what I'm thinking, but he just looked to me like someone he was in the zone. He was like, he wasn't distracted at all. I really like to see that when you see, especially new players in the league. Obviously sometimes there can be confidence issues. I saw a guy who, I mean, I was trying to think how to explain it without getting sort of too technical. And basically, so I'll try a little bit. So basically, skilled movement, when we get skillful at something, it becomes more automatic, right? We don't have to think about how we perform a skill. And there's actually different brain regions responsible for how we perform skills skillfully and automatically. It's a bit like driving a car. When you first learn to drive a car, you have to think very consciously about what you're doing with your hands on the steering wheel, how you move your feet on the pedals, and how you change gears. You have to think consciously about how to do those movements, but very quickly it becomes very automatic, and your focus becomes external, and you focus only on the environment outside of that. And unconscious automatic processes take over that movement, because different brain regions are responsible for very skilled movement. Okay, so it's a very distinct thing. And so there's no kind of conscious thought process. And if we do start to think consciously, that skill typically starts to break down. So that's what happens when people get nervous, basically, or under pressure, and people miss penalties. It's because they get very nervous and they start to try to consciously control their movements. And so we see a breakdown of skills. It's really kind of basic movement science. And I don't want to go into the details of it because it's too boring. But that's what we see. When you try to consciously control skills too much, the skills they break down a little bit. And I think there's a lot of players who are kind of on a bit of a spectrum in terms of that. And I always look for that in players. There are some players who I think they're sort of quite susceptible to thinking consciously, to kind of self-reflection. I think of players like Raheem Sterling or Marcus Rashford. And these sort of players, when people talk about form, these are the sort of players I think of, because it's not everybody for me that's necessarily really susceptible to form and to thinking more consciously and starting to trying to control their movements and to think about the crowd and all of the sort of things that are going on around them. And you can pick it up with some players. It's not easy to pick it up with everyone, but you can start to pick it up with some players. And I think it can be really important. You think about the other end of the spectrum. This is one of the things I was thinking about before. I was thinking about Luis Suarez. I don't know why, but he was like an example for me, especially in that season where I didn't see him kind of self-reflecting or thinking consciously. I don't think once all season. And it was like an example of really skilled automatic movement. It's like the opposite of kind of choking under pressure. So anyway, just like when I was watching Woltemade, I saw a player who, and this is really nice and refreshing, and something that I like to look for straight away in a player. I saw a player where I wasn't seeing someone self-reflecting on the pitch or thinking consciously, which breaks down skills. When people choke under pressure, they start to think consciously about what they're doing. I think Calvert-Lewin is a very sort of conscious player. I think he's like
Richarlison for us, very similar. Richarlison does that all the time.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good example. And you can see that thought process, and that's a bit like Calvert-Lewin, why all the shots go down the middle, because he doesn't have the belief to kind of just execute it externally to allow the movement, because it's a different part of your brain. It's actually a different brain region responsible for skilled movement. And as soon as you start to think consciously, it disrupts that process. And when I was watching Woltemade, I just saw a guy who was focusing entirely externally, a bit like when you drive and you're just looking out the windscreen. You're not thinking about your feet moving across the pedals. You're not thinking about how you're moving. I saw a guy who was just like totally at ease, which is massive. I mean, we haven't seen enough of him, so that could be a temporary thing. Maybe he's feeling really good. Maybe he's confident. That's the sort of thing. There's a caveat there. But straight away, I see a guy who was just in the zone. So all the decisions were right, and he wasn't afraid of anything. He was taking people on. He didn't mind being close to players with the ball. The decisions are right. The passes are right. And this is all outside the penalty, by the way. The penalty was like totally encapsulated what I'm saying. I mean, who hits a penalty like that? That's a penalty hit by someone who isn't remotely phased or nervous. And that can be a whole range of things. People have these sort of inclinations towards thinking styles, and it can be confidence and whatnot. It's just everybody's different. I'm somebody who always used to suffer from thinking too much under pressure. And I'd sort of bottle it whenever my dad came to watch me play football. And I was amazing when he wasn't there. And I was terrible when he was there. And, I still get it when I can play pool and stuff now. And, I can be absolutely sensational after a few pints and just, but terrible other times. And he just struck me as this guy who, and that's just a big box for me with Woltemade. I just thought, if this guy's got the minutes, he was in the zone for the whole game. So all the decisions were right. And you just think, when you've got a guy like that, when the chance comes, they tend to put it away, which is what he's been doing. And the penalty was so representative of that. So whether I think he's a good pick or not, I'm not sure. But that gave me an awful lot of confidence in someone like Woltemade. If I think the minutes are there as a personality, I love that in a personality, because it's only been 7 weeks, so that could change. But if it's more of a trait personality than a state personality, for want of a technical term, then those are the sort of players who would be less affected by confidence and form, because they just think that way anyway. That's just how they are. That's just how they play. It's like Wayne Rooney when he was 17. I always thought he could have been a god. He could have been the greatest player in history. But there was just a little 10% where he started to think a lot, just a little bit too much 10%. And he actually, as good as Wayne Rooney was, I actually think he was held back by the 10% of kind of overthinking that for some reason was kind of put into his brain as like a goblin, to use a Steve Peters term. But anyway, so it's a long rant. And I just, me watching Woltemade in that game, I just thought, oof, this guy is, at least at the moment, a guy who's just totally in the zone. He's not, and that's actually almost unique as well for a really tall guy like Woltemade, because often when you're really tall like that and you're kind of gangly and you can foul people more easily and your coordination's more difficult, sometimes that actually makes you think consciously a bit more than the average player, and you're not as a kind of automatic. But this guy was just, I was just seeing a guy who was completely in the zone for the whole game. Yeah, and I like that a lot in a player. And a pick, if they've got the minutes. So yeah.
The minutes though, that's the only thing is, if they beat if they beat us, so for those that don't know me enough to know that I'm a Spurs fan, so they're home to us in the 4th round of the Carabao. But that means if they do beat us, then they're only midweek free before, well, potentially through to the end of January is Christmas Day or Christmas weekend. Like, because it's Prem Europe, Prem Carabao, Prem Europe, Prem international break, then we come back and then it's Prem Europe, Prem, all in one calendar week, then Europe, then Prem, then the next round of the Carabao, then Prem, then it's Christmas, and then you've got nearly 7 games, including potentially FA Cup and Carabao. Like, so you've suddenly got all of these games, and if Whistler's not about, it was so noticeable when Asula comes on that it's like, you know what I mean? Is Asula's just not a Premier League striker, is he? He doesn't not really
Runs
pretending
about.
to be. Runs about, but you wouldn't. I worry that what they go is you can't suddenly go, well, okay, one game I won't play Volt, I'll play Asula. Will they continually just take him off with 20 minutes to go every single game?
Do you know what's an interesting parallel here? It's not going to answer the question specifically, but it just shows your point there, Baker, about Asula and Woltemade is people probably saying no one owns him anymore, right? I started with him, but no one's going to own him probably for the rest of the season. But Fulkrug got injured during this international break, right? Now he's our only sort of fit starting striker, really, who could, in theory, have played more than 45 minutes, 60 minutes for a start. No one's bothered. No one's remotely bothered that a German international striker with a bunch of goals who's got previous talent and whatever. No one's bothered that he's injured. Woltemade is almost in that kind of complete opposite space, as you say, where you take him off for 10 minutes and you notice that drop off in quality and everyone would be bothered. He's already embedded himself in such an important position. So it's just such an interesting, 2 German strikers put together there, but just goes to show, how important he's already become. I do like him, Danny. I think it's an important one. And actually, just your point, I really find it interesting to get into this kind of profiling of players the way that you did it there, because I remember we talked before about players like Saka and Boomo, people who they're incredibly efficient and the decision making is of such high quality. And Woltemade's opposite. See, operates in a slightly different way, whereas you say that the decision making is really good because he's in that kind of state and confidence and flow space and instinctiveness. So it's a slightly different example, but again, it's really interesting to kind of hear about that profile. Thank you, by the way, Adam, who says he's already here. He's on the balcony in Turkey. No one cares about West Ham. I know. Yeah. I'm well aware of that. Not a problem. It's fine.
Sorry, what offers as a friend of Danny's for a long time on this one is people might wonder, why would you spend so long doing it? From an FPL perspective, even if this isn't a player that you end up picking, what I can tell you as a observer of Danny for many years in terms of how he plays is, and what I don't think people do enough there is, there's an element of what I'm going to do is invest in a player here to an extent, and then what that enables you to do is be more resilient with the transfers to an extent, because one both in being more resilient of whether I get him in or not, because I'm looking to whether I wed myself to him or not, but then when he does, I'll stay with him for longer. We had, and I know you like that, like, João Pedro, your boy last season and stuff like that. But there are boys, once you're there, your boy, and I think especially with strikers, you do look at that as people where you're like, okay, I like that. I'm invested in a guy, and I don't think there's enough people that do that enough. It's almost like, oh, these fixtures are coming up, I'll just get someone from that team because I like it, and then you're immediately like, I'm not so sure so quickly.
No, I have to say, I mean, I've picked something up off that kind of mentality, because the transfers I'll talk about a bit later on, like there's no logic about doing them this week. There's no logic in using them at this point in time. But if you've seen something and you believe in it and that it's going to make a difference over the course of months, then that's when you might kind of take that position. I want to talk about. Sorry, go on, Danny.
Can I just say on that topic though, it's amazing, isn't it? Because again, whether I'm right or wrong, I mean, about certain players, I'm looking at that player. It's so silly, this silly game that we play, fantasy football, in a way that's like really serious to me. as really like any scout should be looking at a player, like, because I'm looking at that player to see how stable they are psychologically and what I think about them psychologically as a player and what they can handle, how they think, whether they are the sort of person who's going to self-reflect or have self-doubt on the pitch or think too much on the pitch, like a Calvert-Lewin or a Raheem Sterling and these sort of guys you can pick up that are more obvious. It's obviously something that the football scouts should be doing. You would hope they'd be doing, but maybe don't or can't. It's not easy, and I'm not saying I can. I like to think that I can, or at least I don't even care whether I can, because I go with what I think. I go with that kind of decision, and I back myself to do that. But it is fascinating because that's what I'm doing. I'm assessing him psychologically, and that's what I do with almost every player, especially when they're new to a league. Like, I want to know what I'm buying into, just like you should want to know as a football club buying a player. It's exactly the same thing, which is quite funny. I hadn't really thought of it like that before, but so yeah, for example, I'm just to say another player before I forget, but. Sesko is another one where I've not. Again, we can't make our minds up fully about, because Baker mentioned Man United, so I wanted to mention it again and come back to it just slightly. But I've not fully made my mind up about Sesko, and I've not fully made my mind about Woltemade because, like I say, people can go through phases, and we don't know if it's just confidence. We don't know how stable a trait that is in his personality yet. It's just a very good sign. And in what little I've seen of Sesko so far, although I think he had time, he needed time to actually play, and he still does, and get fit and all that sort of stuff. But in the little bits that I've seen, it's quite similar. I'm seeing a guy who really positive from a fan point of view, and from a what have you invested money wise point of view, because I'm seeing someone who looks stable in terms of mentally and confident. Like in the little bits that I've seen, I think he played half. What was it? Was it against Chelsea when he only played a half or something, and we had a man sent off? And it never got spoken about because he only played a half. But what I saw an awful lot in that half, personally, for Sesko. For me, for what I think about a player, how I evaluate a player. And I saw someone a bit like Woltemade, who was in the zone. He was focusing. He was thinking externally. He wasn't worried about how he was going to perform. He wasn't thinking about his feet, and he wasn't scared. It's a huge box to tick about when someone, because it means they're stable mentally. It means that they're not going to self-combust and, kind of bottle it under pressure. It's a massive box to tick when you're buying a player. So obviously they must try and do it as scouts, but it's amazing how often that fails when you get a player who's 50 million, 60 million, 70, 80 million quid. And suddenly you're playing on a big stage in the Premier League, and you realise that psychologically they're not the right fit because there's too much self-doubt, or that they can't get over it, and all this sort of stuff. And I was going to go to an initial point, but obviously I've talked too long and then forgotten it. But that was my point about Sesko, is that in that little bit that I've seen, it was really positive to me, really positive in terms of a mental thing, because I know he's not physically there yet, but I think it's already made me think, oh, this guy is someone to watch out. And Baker mentioned Man United before, because we've got no Europe. It's a really good one to look at. So I'm low-key really feel positive about Sesko, just from the little bit that I saw. Not just how he plays, but his psychological makeup and how I think he views the game. He's a guy who isn't scared. So yeah, I forgot my point alongside that, but never mind. It's just a big thing. In terms of transfers, you're making a transfer for a player. I'm trying to think of examples where it can go the opposite way, but you're buying into sort of stability. You want to feel that the things that dictate whether that player plays well is kind of injuries, team selection, and not how he is mentally, and how fragile he is, or how brave he is, and all that sort of stuff. And when you see those boxes tick, like I have so far with Woltemade, huge focused box ticks, bravery box tick. The guy's not asked. That penalty was a joke. So it might be a temporary thing, confidence-wise, but it says a hell of a lot about the type of person you are and the type of brain you have. It's a huge thing on the value of a transfer, by the way. It's one of these things that's just so important when you spend all that money on a player to get right. But yeah, so Sesko, low-key to me, looks like one to look out for.
No, I really like that. I mean, actually, just there's a kind of message in there, isn't there, about being able to trust your own kind of analysis skills and your own instinctive ability. And I've known you both as managers for a little while. Baker, I think we first got talking, didn't we? I know that there was the kind of doppelganger theory or what have you, where you find the kind of managers who are making kind of similar calls and that sort of thing. And it's always really struck me that, actually following on from kind of what Danny was saying, that you're someone who, got a great eye for actually just watching the games and being able to pick out things that other people don't. And when you trust that instinct, it tends to go much better in FPL, doesn't it? Ultimately, because, you cut yourself out, you don't listen to other people quite so much and just kind of follow those instincts. So actually that's kind of similar for both you and Danny here kind of as well. We should probably move on to just talk a little bit about that kind of Liverpool question, because I know that a lot of people have been kind of messaging the same. Actually, when you were talking about players who looked instinctive and in the zone earlier in the season, I can't help but think back to that kind of period where Ekitike was looking like that player, and I almost wonder whether it has done them a little bit more damage in a sense, having these different options. I know that's a very simplistic kind of way of looking at it, but I mean, the question there is quite interesting, because I was really tempted, and forgive me for whoever asked it, when they say, is Mo dead, just to say, yeah, sure, yeah. But no, it's okay. We're not going to do that. Do you guys think that they're poor assets right now because of recent form, or is it time to kind of jump back in with the fixture swing? I mean, where are you with this, Baker? Is it part of your kind of peripheral planning? Because obviously you wildcarded last week. Were you tempted to get in there early? Was there a kind of plan to jump in at a certain point in certain positions or not?
There wasn't last week at all. No, I didn't have a temptation at all for it. As the sort of like, absence makes the heart grow fonder and all stuff of thinking about it and looking at the long-term fixtures, looking at where it is, I start to question that decision. A little bit more of bloody hell, like it is pretty good, but it's still the same. It's still the same conversation that we just had of whether you're Liverpool, whether you're Arsenal, whether you're Man City, whether you're Chelsea, whether you're Newcastle, whether you're Tottenham, right now, this is it. This is the end of week-to-week games. It's full on now. Every week, midweeks will matter. European games will matter more as people start trying to get over the line. And I'm trusting minutes much less and less than ever on even on Mo. Not that we've got any proof that we should trust the minutes less on Mo, but I definitely get the feeling that we should trust the minutes less on Mo. Watching the game against Chelsea, do I think they lose that game if they take Mo off with 20 minutes to go? I don't think they do. I think I think everyone pointed it out that they were able to just use the fact that the guy can't press, and has been covered defensively for a long period of time, and now they're getting done on the transition, and you're like, God, now they're trying to get even more forward guys into the team. It's just, I just don't think I want to be the first guy back on them. That's my feeling on it. Is I don't think I do. Do I think game week 12? Well, maybe home to Forest, it won't be by then as good a game as it looks right now. But you need to have a plan. You do need to have a plan. I still think, yes, we don't know. There's so much we just don't know. Like, do we know whether Wirtz or Szoboszlai is the best 10?
Yeah.
Don't know. It's, do we know that if that position is Szoboszlai, do we know if it's Gakpo or Wirtz for left wing? Because we know originally it was Gakpo or Rio for that, which is 90% Gakpo, and actually Gakpo's completely nailed. And if that's the case, then he's an incredible asset at 7 million playing left wing all the time. But we can't help but think, well, if Szoboszlai starts playing centre mid, back to that midfield three, and then Wirtz is suddenly playing on the left, and then suddenly that's all shaky. And then where do we fit? Even the positions then, it's Isak versus Ekitike, Chiesa every time. Chiesa's just not letting them down whenever he comes on.
No, he's good, isn't he? Yeah.
There's so much stuff that I just feel like I feel like with Liverpool, we're entering game week 8, and like less than you knew before game week 1.
Yeah, it does rather feel like that, doesn't it? Yeah.
Like, we knew in game week 1, didn't we, that Gakpo was going to start left wing, and we almost knew that Wirtz was going to start. That's why a lot of people went with him, and we knew that Salah would play. So you'd be like, well, those three are going to play, and we knew Ekitike was going to play because Isak wasn't there. So you kind of knew what the front four would be in most weeks. You ain't got a clue now.
I mean, just to add to that, I think what's odd about this, if you asked us perhaps 2 weeks ago, I know the question is specific to attacking assets, but I think most people would broadly have had a kind of rough plan in their head that in 12 they were going to probably have Virgil van Dijk plus at least one attacker, right? And of course, you most people have probably taken that out of their kind of peripheral planning as well. It's quite hard to justify kind of going back into that mix as well with the defensive element as well. So it's even more unclear, as you said, than it was before. Danny.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't know where to start with Liverpool. Obviously, I agree with everything Baker said. I mean, it's just broadly, you've got to just play what's in front of you, haven't you, is the main thing right now in this game. We always say that now these days. I mean, you can, of course. I mean, there are people I saw it talked about on Twitter, can't remember who, but, talking about this is a great opportunity to go Salah, for example, and just go all out on Salah now with the great fixtures. And that's true. That's obviously objectively true. It's a different bet than it ever has been. It's a bet that's more likely to lose than it ever has done. But it's still, if you just look at the numbers and the models, you could just go Salah now for quite a few fixtures. Maybe not this week. I can't remember how it is. Yeah, not particularly this week. I'm not as keen on Liverpool versus United as other people are, by the way. But there's a good few weeks there where you could just take that gamble absolutely fine. But it's way more of a sort of dice roll and a gamble than it ever has been, definitely. I mean, Salah's has been for a long time the one constant, hasn't he, in terms of who you would back and the guy who's getting to get the minutes and the position and what he does and all that sort of stuff. And the fact that that's in the air slightly now is wild. But it has to come at some point, and it doesn't mean it's going to stay like that. But it's pretty wild, and we haven't been in this situation before. But Liverpool are just so hard to read, aren't they? Because I'm just looking back and thinking about the results and playing in this kind of weird, wild way. I mean, we could probably reasonably say that this is the worst we've seen them for a long time, and in terms of Salah and the kind of where they are and how we feel about them. And yet you look and they beat Bournemouth, still managed to do that comfortably. Then they beat Newcastle away, and I think they were weren't they 2-0 up, and then they nearly threw it away, and then they won it anyway. And then they beat Arsenal.
They did do that against Bournemouth, to be fair. They did go from 2-0
exactly.
to 2-0.
Exactly. And and then they beat Arsenal, who I guess I don't think Arsenal necessarily approached that game maybe in the right way. Maybe it could have gone either way, but maybe Arsenal didn't realise that they were there for the taking, which you might probably regret. But that's 3 ridiculous games to walk away with wins, even if it's just by whatever excuse you're going to say for it. This is Liverpool as bad as we've seen, and they're still right up there and have won all these games. And it's funny looking back now at that Bournemouth game. Remember because Carragher had a real go at the manager, didn't he? Afterwards,
yeah.
And you think, wow, fair play. Because a lot of people were like, "What are you doing? How dare you?" at the time, and it was quite kind of
Well, yeah, what they were doing with the fullbacks, but the position of the fullbacks is still no better at any point. And that's almost a bit that doesn't that worry you more, because it's one of those things in it when you've got points in the bank, you're just less reluctant to learn and do stuff because I've got points in the bank. You know what I mean?
For sure. That's...
Ultimately, it's the currency we play with, and if you've it's like when we play FPL, and if you've had the incredible first 5 or 6 weeks, then regardless of whether you got lucky or not, you think you know what you're doing. That's how it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is such a big transition as well. You forget about all the. I know a lot of the focus has been on the forwards and people like Wirtz and obviously Isak and Ekitike and all these players and having to gel that, but actually, you could probably make a case for the fact that the fullbacks is almost the most significant change, and just in terms of how they functioned as a team and what Trent actually gave them. And now that just to completely take that away, I mean, they must be missing Trent a hell of a lot more than anyone even imagined in a way, maybe because of the way he made them function. And obviously a prime Robertson and what they did. And, what Klopp for so long molded them into. I mean, to be fair to, I've forgotten his name now, the Liverpool manager. My brain's totally frazzled at the moment, but I'll be okay in a minute. But to be fair to this, to the new manager, what's the Liverpool manager's name?
Slot.
I just can't get Klopp out of my head. So to be fair to Slot, so much has changed in terms of the new, Mo's getting older, all these new attackers, losing Trent and Robertson getting older, and you think about what Klopp drilled them into for so long. So it's so difficult losing your 2 fullbacks like that, and they've obviously got centre-back issues. So it's not just kind of an attack. It's almost like a whole new team in a weird way. And I was thinking even about just briefly a second ago, thinking about Luis Diaz. I don't really know what it was behind him leaving, to be honest, and I don't really know. I've forgotten, I suppose, what happened there, because it's a funny one, isn't it? Because when he first joined, as a kind of a Mane replacement in that very specific role where you really need, Mane was really good at tracking back and winning the ball and so good positionally. And actually, although he wasn't quite as good as Mane, because Mane was absolutely incredible, I felt like it was really close to Mane, and I felt like he was actually brilliant at doing things that maybe you don't appreciate as much. I know he was a bit of a form player and he went in sort of dips, but I thought he brought a lot actually to that team down that left-hand side in terms of, at the time, it looked like a great replacement for Mane. And so it's a funny one that he's been let go. I'm not sure that what he brought to the team was necessarily appreciated enough, and maybe it is being appreciated more in terms of what you've got in these sort of positions, and what you sacrifice by losing a player like that. But yeah, I mean, you're right, Baker. How do they learn? I mean, that's the thing. When's that learning curve going to come, and how is it going to come? And to be honest, if it would take almost miracle-like work, I think, potentially to throw something a bit speculative out there, a bit, that Slot would be able to do that. It's a huge thing for him to do. He's completely changed the team. And how do you do it mid-season? The Premier League is the most unforgiving thing, I mean, in the world, isn't it? How the hell do you change that and make it work quickly enough to win the title? I mean, it's virtually impossible. So it seems like an impossible task now. But yeah, I mean,
that game this weekend, it's Liverpool lose it, it's a crisis. Liverpool win it, and we're all like, geez, we need to get on.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, how much would it take for you to shift plans to target to bring in either Isak or Saka? Because I think those are the two sort of pillars that people are looking to build around, Gyökeres to Isak or something along those lines. I mean, part of the reason I don't know whether I can't speak for you, Danny, but we've both got Bruno and Gyökeres, and obviously there's quite an easy to transfer to get one situation down the line if you want to. So what would you have to see?
I'd have to see an awful lot with Isak. I mean, I think I could possibly even afford that, to be honest, without selling Bruno, because I've got quite a lot. It's probably pretty close anyway. I think that's been in my mind actually as part of the reason of selling Van Dijk last week instead of a cheaper defender. I mean, Isak is obviously slightly different. I mean, we could see a transition. That's a bigger bet to make, that we see a transition where Isak is becomes the main man or the main FPL pick. Obviously, it's the whole Ekitike thing. He is a guy again who passes the kind of psychological test when I'm watching him of what's his attitude like. How does he going to approach this? He's a guy who's ticked a massive box, because you never know how anyone's going to perform in the Premier League. And whatever anyone thinks of Ekitike, he doesn't look phased. He doesn't look like he gives a shit, which is huge value. It means you can play him in almost any game and know that you can rest your striker and get a good game out of him. He's looked really good. So that's really significant for Isak's minutes. It doesn't matter how good Isak is. If you've got someone that good who can play in your position happily when they've got that many fixtures, it's just simply, you don't care who they play for. You don't want a 60-minute striker, 70-minute striker when there are so many other good players on offer. So Isak's further away from my thinking for sure. And it's just it's just a big jump, isn't it, to get it all to click now, such that Salah becomes what he was, or is he ever going to again? I don't know, because that's a huge ask, because he's been the best ever for so long. It's just a big ask, and I still don't see anyone really being the option other than Salah if we do see something approaching that kind of return to, because I still think Salah can do it. He still looks pretty sharp. I think it's a lot of it is like what's going on around him. I think so. It's just you just have to wait until you see it. It would take an awful lot. For me to
there
go.
Just before I move on, when AFCON comes along, Chiesa right wing, we will be there, of course. So that's the most important learning that you can take from this. I'm sure Danny will pick him for sure. He's definitely not going to be a minute's risk. That last question on the screen, I don't want to go into it too heavily, because we did have a similar kind of question last week about boring. I think we all know who's asked this, Mr. Caicedo owning Pep Talk in the chat. I'm pretty sure he must have dropped that one in. But I mean, I think our feeling on it last week was that that's certainly my feeling on it. You can't win FPL with a heavy DEFCON strategy, just because it's with something like that is a predictable routine method of securing your points. You're not going to be able. The winner of FPL is always going to have to, in whatever how many positions, pick those players who go on those hot streaks at the right time. The Munoz for 6 game weeks in a row where he gets 4 goals and 2 assists, that kind of thing. You're always going to need the bit where Ekitike does get sufficient minutes and you back him for that time when no one else has got enough transfers to do it. So to go very boring, I think you must be talking about someone who has your kind of Caicedos, Andersons, as well as the defence. I think, yeah, you would really struggle to win. I think it's almost impossible. But I don't know. What do you think, Baker?
I absolutely do not agree with it. But there's, for me, it's what do you play the game for, to an extent? Not even just before you even get in, is it the optimal way to play or not? There has to be elements of when we talked about how romantically Danny, I'll repeat for those that have come in later, laid around naked for 2 hours thinking about Nick Woltemade.
Naked,
pretty much.
Oh, okay.
Do you know what I mean? Would I be doing the similar? Would I be doing? Can I put myself? I want to say picture myself. I don't want to say picture myself, but would I offer that level of commitment to try and understand, why necessarily a guy is achieving DEFCON? I just wouldn't. And is that where I want to be thinking and spending my time thinking about how can I get more DEFCON in my team and do that? There's a natural movement towards, for me, of is he a good pick? Like, was he always a good pick? Is he a good pick? And does he then do I change a little bit because of actually there's a nuance that I already liked the pick and now I like him a little bit more because actually he has this door that's open to him that enables a little bit more points than what he would have got previously. Do I think there's a way which I then go, are there people that have... I think there's a lot more exclusions from DEFCON. So those guys that are not very good at bonus and not very good at DEFCON, well, you need to be so unbelievably prolific at everything else. You need to be incredibly prolific, whether it's cleans, whether it's assists is probably just not enough on its own. You've got to be scoring at least every other game. If you're those guys that sometimes like a Brennan Johnson for Tottenham, yeah, for example, if Brennan was playing all the time, even when he scores, he wouldn't really get the bonus because he just doesn't do enough. There'll always be somebody else that gets it, and you're like, well, this guy's going to score and get 7 points, and he's going to score every other game, which means he's really only going to get like 4.5 points a game, even with an incredible... Like, he can score 19 goals in a season and get a goal every other game. That doesn't feel particularly sustainable to have that guy in your team, because the second the fixtures don't look good, or the second he comes off or doesn't start, you're just going to be so like, see you later, and get those guys gone. So I tend to be thinking about DEFCON more in a, does it make certain picks a bit more stupid? More than I'd be in the client to say, well, I'll pick this guy because even if he doesn't return, he might give me 4 points. That's not for me.
No,
I just don't think it has. I mean, we said before, don't we? I don't think it has the same ceiling. I mean, some of the simple answers for me are, I don't think it has the same ceiling. I've not really thought that in depth. But I don't think it has the same ceiling, which is a really important point. I always play FPL to try and win the game, and that's what everyone should really do. So you should find how you're going to try and do that. So I don't think that a DEFCON approach can do that. I mean, the other thing is comparing the two approaches. I mean, if I'm playing, let's say, 3-5, whatever, 3-5-2 or 3-4-3, I've got 3 defenders, likely the best ones that I can pick, that have got DEFCON, and I can rotate. I've only got 2 players who aren't DEFCON there, so I'm rotating. I've got the defenders with the best fixtures or the best. It's a different thing to rotate to a guy who's stuck with 5, whether it's maybe Walsh in the first team that he had, and he's stuck with who was the Brentford centre back or something, or whoever you want to go. Even if it's like Tarkowski with a bad fixture, it's a different thing. It's a different ceiling when you have to play 5 defenders. with a bit of DEFCON. Everybody's got the extra DEFCON points for 3 out of the 5 players. You have to play 3 defenders. So everybody's got 60% of the DEFCON extra points and all that sort of stuff. It's just, do you want 2 extra defenders that you can't rotate with bad fixtures that might concede 2 goals and yay, they get DEFCON, so they get 3 points instead of 1. Yeah, what a result. Or do you want to rotate the midfielders who it's a bit more about the fixtures and the kind of matchups and that sort of stuff. I mean, it's pretty straightforward to me in terms of at the moment. It's I always play for the potential, and for me, the potential and the ceiling is in, as it always has been, the midfielders and the forwards to a lesser extent, maybe.
Yeah.
But it's definitely fun in terms of switching. In terms of switching that rotation, thinking about the forwards. I suppose the forwards are closer to the defenders, and there is a bit more. There's definitely more room to go for a 4-4-2 if you want to save a transfer or play 4 at the back and that sort of stuff.
And thank God, I must call him Mark Southern's God, but thank God for AFCON transfers. This is what I'm going to say. Because if we did not have those AFCON transfers, we didn't have effectively like an extra wild card. We would want to be entering into Game Week 16 with 5 transfers in the bank. And the best way for us to have got there would have been to go DEFCON nuts. Actually, that's the only thing right now is between now and 16, this is the time to go seeding players. This is the time to keep attacking with certain things that you think they might brace. And
you know what? The other thing that I'll just say quickly, and I haven't really thought about this.
You've got to be on 0, haven't you? You've got to be on 0, but you've got to be on 0 by 16 on free transfers.
Yeah.
You can't carry any.
The other thing, if anyone's thinking about this approach and about DEFCON and trying a different approach, because it's absolutely fine, because you never know how the game is. At the end of the day, it's dictated by the football and how the games go and how many clean sheets we get and that sort of stuff. But what's really interesting is, and I think it's been talked about already in other places, is the kind of mismatch between the new approach and style of football that we're seeing and the DEFCON points that are awarded. And I don't think it's quite right yet. I mean, again, it's a small sample, but it's been talked about and I can't remember where. But in terms of just how many DEFCON points, for example, defenders get, because the football has changed. It's more direct and whatnot. We're seeing this different approach to the game, aren't we? And I think it was it on? It might have been someone showed me a segment, or there was a segment on. It might have been Planet FPL, and he just looked at the actual list of defenders, and it looked at like interceptions, I think it was, or one aspect of DEFCON, and it was the whole top 20. I don't know if you guys saw it, but it was like the top 20 or 30 defenders, and it was literally it's the whole league, the whole defense. It was literally, we're talking like the guy in first last season had like 3.5 or 4 interceptions per game or whatever, that as an average. And this one was like, this season it was like 9 and 8 at the top. 7, 6, 5, 6. We're seeing a completely different style of football. So I don't think that the point scoring, in other words, at the moment this season is not quite right. There's a mismatch. So defenders can get DEFCON too easily this season. It will probably change with the style of football. It's one of these things that's really difficult to get right and match. But I think defenders, what they need to get DEFCON should actually be higher than it is. And so this is actually probably the last season that they'll get it so easily. So in other words, if this season doesn't work for DEFCON and for changing that approach, arguably it never will. And this might be the time to try and play around with that, because they're getting DEFCON too easily, defenders, this season.
I just wanted to add one thing to this question before we move on to just a couple of other quick ones, and then we'll look at the fixtures this week. I think everyone here, probably a lot of the people in the chat, that they will be some people who make use of stats and data and models to a larger or greater extent, etc. For example, Baker on above average, make great studies into bonus and to a different kind, obviously the DEFCON statistics and that sort of thing this time around. But what I will say, and this is a good chance to just remind ourselves who we are and why we play this, is there anything quite so Moorish as deliberately making transfers where that the models are going to hate it? And it's not just related to DEFCON specifically, but I'm thinking about what I'm looking at this week, and I know they would never suggest it. And it's Moorish, even for a boring manager like me, just to occasionally think, do you know what? I believe in that player. I'm going to do it anyway, and you can't stop me. And we're all a bit James Bond and a bit Maverick, and it's going to happen. So that's what I'm going to say to there. I think we're almost clocking an hour here. It's about time I just had a moment to say, if you are enjoying this and our wonderful guests like Baker, who's joined us this evening from Above Average, please do press those likes and subscribes and retweet to your grandma and all the things that you could possibly do to make this go well. That'd be very, very kind of you. And thank you again for those who are still joining us in the chat. I've got a couple of quick dilemmas here before we move on to the games, because I know we've answered a lot of questions already. And these are just quick ones, but one of our good regulars, Danny, has said this week, and I thought I'd direct this one specifically to you to start with. He's on a Bruno and Boomo double up still. Need to downgrade one to afford Richarlison and up to Pedro or Bowen. Any ideas which one and who to downgrade to? So I'll come to you in a minute, Baker, but he can't do Arsenal and he's already tripled up. Current mids is Semenyo stack and TJ, I assume, is Reinders. So what do you like? Who would you downgrade to sort of stack up the midfield, and which of Pedro and Bowen do you like? Well, or Woltemade, presumably.
Right, this is again my problems. I'm just going to say something completely different. Can I just and then come to Baker instead? Can I just, on your last point, because I can't get it out of my head now, but you were talking about that move that you're thinking about that's kind of suboptimal. And these kind of anti-model moves, and it made me think of a move that I don't know how it's interesting to think, would I make this move now because I'm more informed and, you know, and because of models and stuff. And it was a good few years ago. I think it was my best season. I think finished like 500th, and it was like, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years ago. It was the Alonso season at Chelsea. And I did a totally anti-move. It was anti-model move. And do you know what? I think it was in this exact international break. And it was like a -4 to bring in Alonso and, who was the dude playing for Bournemouth up front with Callum Wilson? Brent Fraser and Alonso for a -4. Totally suboptimal move. And Alonso got 19 points and Fraser got 21. And I did it for a -4 that week. Nice. And that set up my whole season completely. And because you were alluding to the sort of timber switch move, or that kind of switch that's totally anti-model move. And I like it as well, because I know exactly what you're saying. It's such an anti-model move, but such a kind of a pro kind of eye test and potential move. It's a move that has so much potential. It could go either way, but it's interesting anyway. So I just had to say that was the great.
I'm sure Baker's got a similar move to the one that you described there in his memory as well. But I'm just thinking back. I remember once really late, close to a deadline, and just hitting in, what's his name, Aaron Ramsey, as part of a -8, or it was a ridiculous move at the time. But it was away to someone, a hard fixture, and he scored 2 goals and got an assist. And it made no sense on paper. But, you know, you just watch him and be like, this guy is absolutely in the zone. I've got to do it. Back then, it was before, you know, I knew anyone else who played the game and that sort of thing. So it was all right. But I think we haven't answered this question very well, have we? I'll come back to it in a minute. Sorry, Baker.
We like the anti-model moves. That's a bit of fun. My most fun anti-model move was there was a double game week for Brighton. Daddy will definitely remember this. There was a double game for Brighton and everyone got Duncan. All the models got Duncan.
Yeah.
And I was 0.1 short of getting Duncan. And I got Webster in instead of Doug. And Webster got an 18-pointer, scores a header, and Dunk gets sent off in the first game. So every one of us went Dunk. He gets sent off, gets a -1, doesn't play the second game. Webster got 17 points in the first game, and then just got 1 point at Old Trafford in the second game, and I didn't give a shit because it was like yeah, whatever. But yeah, that was a beautiful moment.
It was. It reminds me of. I know we'll move on, but it reminds me of the famous one that everyone was on the side of. Do you remember? It was the Diaz or Stones one, that double game week. And those of us who were already on Diaz, we already had our second City defender. So I was on Diaz, the more expensive defender. And I remember, for some reason, I always remember that FPL Salah was one of them, and there were loads of other people on X or Twitter or whatever, and who couldn't afford Diaz, so they got John Stones in. Do you remember? And he got something like 24 points. Was it you bastard?
Yeah.
That too.
He got something stupid like 24 points in that double, and Diaz did nothing.
I was convinced after it because I had Stones and then the next season was the Webster one. I was then convinced whatever happens, if there's double game week, I'll just get it. I can't help it now. Every single double game week, I'm like, what's the centre back that might just get me that 20-pointer?
Yeah. It's such a brutal game that we play. Such a brutal game.
Such a brutal game. Anyway, on this one,
Boomo
to Sarr, and then Richarlison is. But if you think about the amount we've talked about, Sesko, Woltemade, are either of those two in conversation if you were looking for a striker or on wildcard over a Pedro or Bowen?
I think sorry, just very quickly on Bowen. I mean, I think he does strike me as the kind of pick. We'll come to the second point in a minute about buzzkill, but
Interweave,
I think
mate,
you've got a kind of horizon where you're thinking, okay, I've done a wild card, for example, as you say, and I've still got 3 or 4 transfers or some. I mean, very few people will be in this position. Then that's probably maybe where you could be a bit more justified in going for Pedro and Bowen, but I would be going Woltemade out in that situation. And it's not just because of Danny's sexy dream earlier. It is because of just liking the player. But yeah, I think Sarr is the obvious one. Actually, I completely agree with you there. If that is enough to do what he wants. And who would you sell out of those two? Actually, sorry, because it's he has to sell one of those Man United midfielders.
I would. I haven't thought about this, but I would still sell Boomo, to be honest, although we think he's great. I just think I've just got I don't know. I've got a kind of a good feeling about Bruno. I do own him. And I talked about it last week, didn't I? Didn't you ask like biggest differential? And I was thinking like Bruno is like, it's pretty big, man. Everyone's selling him. It's just going down.
Pretty big. I
just can't help but feel good about him. I mean, I don't really think, I know the position's there. I mean, what we talked about just on that point, Baker, I can't remember if it was you pointed out to me or what it was when we were talking the other day, but you know about the number 6s making these runs that no one's marking. Was it on one of those videos?
Adam Cleary's video, yeah, about the new thing of 6s crashing the box and no one's picking them up.
And no one's picking them up. And it's, again, like, who sent out the memo? Like, it's fascinating, the Premier League, isn't it? Like, how are they all doing this sort of shit at the same time? There must be so many of these conversations that go on between scouts and people at clubs and stuff. But they're all doing the same thing. But I'm not even putting Bruno in that bracket, but because Bruno does that anyway. I mean, I still feel really good about him. I mean, he does that anyway, and he does it with. He's so good at making those runs and picking the time and finishing. And he was so close. Was it against Chelsea or something when he was just so close to another goal? Never mind the missed penalties. I just still think you have to view. I'm not going to labour the point on Bruno because I talked about him last time, but I just think you should still objectively view Bruno as a ridiculous pick, really. And I use ridiculous. I deliberately use hyperbole because I have to pull away from the general perception of him who think he's just crap. So I'll go to the other extreme to try and pull it because this guy's still a ridiculous pick. And the interesting thing about Bruno and United and all United picks is we don't really know which way United are going to go. I'm still undecided on the manager and like which way it's going to go with him. And like, it's so hard to read Man United because there's been so many years of complete shit and dross and pollution in the club that you don't really know where the negative stuff is coming from. And you don't know if it's because of the manager or because of other stuff. And should you give him more time or should you not? And then you see like these positives. You see him lose a few and come under loads of pressure. Then you see some amazing performances. And it's so hard to read with the manager. So I don't really know which way it's going to go. But I know that they've got Liverpool. And by the way, we had a really good performance there last year. I think it was at Liverpool rather than at home. But the 2-2, Bruno was the best player on the pitch by a mile, by the way. Which was interesting, and he got an assist and 2 bonus in that game. But we've got a good run of fixtures after that, and you just objectively still a ridiculous pick who ticks every box of like. And I still think he's going to be on penalties, free kicks. One of the few people on 90 minutes. Man United don't have any Europe. He's a ridiculous player. He's a ridiculous finisher. He's a goal scorer. He's an assister. It's so many boxes to tick, and he's a DEFCONer. I mean, it's absurd. It's so easy for Bruno, and he's a bonus machine. And I said this before, like it's not even the same as someone else scoring a penalty. When most people score a penalty like Saka did, you're either going to get no bonus or maybe 1, depending on, obviously it's not as simple as that. But if Bruno scores a penalty, he's getting top bonus because he's just so good on the bonus anyway. Bruno can so easily walk away from any game with 11, 12 points, and it's just hilarious to me right now. It's quite exciting. Of course, he could just blank for me in the next 5 games in a row, but it's exciting that nobody owns this guy who has arguably the most avenues to points of anyone.
The only thing on Boomo I would say is that this is a guy that has spent year after year after year being one of the best transitional attackers in the league, and now he's going up against what I would consider to be like the worst defense in the league for transitional attacks. Like, if there's a kryptonite, it's that Kirkes is an absolute disaster and Robertson can't do the minutes. If there was a game where Boomo and Ahmad could just go absolutely nuts, I don't think it's a bad fixture at all for Boomo up against Liverpool defence. Not even a little bit.
Yeah, can't argue with that, to be honest.
So I'd probably try and keep them both and work it out next week.
Oh, yeah. Okay, there you go. So I'm trying to remember who that was. I think that's our good friend FPL Easy. But yeah, you have your answer.
I wouldn't start with Charlison because I do think that Tell will start that game.
Yeah, true. He's not in the European squads, is that right? You will know.
Not in the European squads.
Yeah.
Scored, started the last, played very well for the under-21s. He always tends to, but played very well for the under-21s. As did Odegaard. So I would expect Tell to start number 9 again.
I'll take the last one just very quickly. I mean, I'm still broadly pretty buzzkill, unfortunately. So apologies for that. But I think one thing has come into play. A lot of people are getting very excited about the Callum Marshall as a 4.4 million striker who will definitely get some minutes with Fulkrug injured. So that's not the worst idea if you're on a wild card and you want someone who's going to pick up probably because he got something like half an hour, 35 minutes at Arsenal instead of Callum Wilson. So not bad. He's a decent finisher. So if you want to go down that line, Bowen's still the best pick. I don't know. I'm not huge. I think about 18 months of hurt, to be honest with you. I haven't seen us play very well for a long, long time now, and it's still stuck there. But definitely some more belief in Nuno. It's interesting, by the way, just to note, it's, again, not a great FPL conversation, but he hasn't got any of his coaching staff with him with this move, which is quite unusual. He's taken, broadly the same people with him to every club, but I don't know whether it's that they're not buying them out of Nottingham Forest. A lot of them have stayed there. Some have gone abroad to manage, that sort of thing. So I don't know how much that changes things, but he's sticking with the coaching staff that were already there. Is it because Sullivan's tight and didn't pay them out? Probably. But that's just a very minor thing. But again, we like to think about these things. We obsess about them because that's what we do. Baker, I'll just very quickly come to you, not Danny, because Danny, we talked about this last week. I mean, do you have any particular views about West Ham picks to go against my kind of buzzkill, or are you happy to stick with me?
No,
on this
I've got a massive buzzkill about West Ham picks. Yeah, I think it's. I lap my hand, I rub my hands together when I see people like doubling up and trebling up on West Ham on wild card. I'm like, crack on, guys, enjoy yourselves. Is like the one thing he definitely did not do, which when he joined mid-season at Forest, was shore the defence up. He conceded 2 a game. For the rest of the season that he was there, wasn't something he was capable of doing. And they're a team that don't score many goals. So yeah, when I hear stuff like maybe he's going to try and play like 3 centre backs, maybe he's doing this, I'm like, oh, no, I don't see it. I think Paqueta is an easy pick because he's less than 6 million quid. Yeah, and he can do all of the things. He's on pens and he will get you some DEFCON. So is Paqueta considerably worth it for me over the 5.0 mids? I think he is. I think he's worth that million quid. Bowen will probably be okay. But
I am just
coming
quick
back
word.
to this AFCON thing. I just keep saying is we have to, whatever transfers you've got in the bank. So what have you got? 3 in the bank?
Yeah.
So you've got to use about 10 transfers between now and game week 15. I'm game week 16. You've got to use them.
This will interest Danny briefly because we won't have talked about it, but as you can imagine, West Ham will definitely have to buy a centre forward in January. It'll be, who knows? It's going to be some journeyman, no doubt. But Joshua Xerxes was linked. Danny.
Sorry, I was going to say Fulcrew's got to go home for Christmas, hasn't he? He's got 3 months of drinking to do.
He usually takes 3 months off around Christmas, doesn't he? Just to load up on the Stollen, and who can blame him? Bloody loves Stollen.
Who can blame him?
But yeah, Joshua Xerxes, he's going to be the guy. Trying to think who else. Oh, Ivan Toney was linked the other day, so that would be amazing. Badge chat. No, we won't do that. What we'll do, just anything that we've kind of missed, but then we'll go into teams. I know we've been sort of rattling on for an hour and a quarter, but there are some games and teams that we haven't necessarily talked through. I mean, actually, I'd be interested to get your view on Chelsea a little bit, Baker, because I know that everyone in the Western world seems to be picking Enzo Fernandez, and we haven't really given him a great deal of credence. We did give him some love last week to some extent. I mean, how do you feel about Chelsea going into that fixture, Baker? Is it a target if you're on wild card or even in your position?
I'll just say, and before, not to interrupt and let Baker speak, but we were talking before about our own processes and what we see in players, and I can't remember. But I was thinking about right at the start of the pod, and I was thinking about Enzo and Baker's process, and what that was one for Baker that I've got to say, he's like 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, he was saying to me, Enzo looks like the pick to me, and it's one of those things that you don't sort of agree or disagree with, but Baker had been doing his own absorption into that particular player.
I prodded you about maybe considering him on wildcard, didn't I? I think I did. You were definitely. It was like a conversation with me and Zoff on it, and I think we just can't remember how it went. But yeah, so yeah, just to sort of props up for that exact point. And strangely, it's like with Enzo for me. One of the things I first noticed about him early in the season is that he wasn't DEFCONing, and that was exciting. So completely the opposite of that. We know that Enzo can play 6. We know that Enzo can play 10, can play 8. He's just a world-class centre. Was a world-class player. Like, there's a reason why I paid 120 million or whatever it was for him. Is because he is incredible and has been able to show that versatility both at international level and at Chelsea level. We've been able to do all of the things. But even when I think when I first liked him, it was when I'd really felt that Palmer was going to go to the right. And I was like, well, as he goes to the right, well, we'll see those box crashing runs from Enzo all the time. He just has an incredible ability to get there at the right time with his head, with his foot, but be there for that one-touch finish. 6 to 10 yards out, he times it brilliantly. And he wants it more than João Pedro to get onto the end of those ones. João Pedro tries to be cute with a lot of them, and whereas he's just a bulldozer of a finisher. Like it's the one where it hit the post late on last week, because he's arriving as fast as he can to get somewhere, he's making those long bursting runs all the time. I think that part of him makes him great. It's quite similar. I watch Enzo and think of it as, what do I want to see from Bruno is that timing of the run. That's the bit. It's not when I see Bruno doing the 25-yard bangers. It's when he scored the goal, when you were like, I didn't even see him coming. I thought that header from Dorgu was to Sesko, and suddenly it's in the net, and you're like, who's running off? Oh, it's Bruno. Didn't even see it come. And Enzo does that. The amount of times the ball goes wide, you're not looking at it. The ball comes in, you're like, who's just... Oh, it's Enzo. He has that ability to time. That's the best way you can use for him. So I think he's a very good asset, because he's also taking corners and they're pretty good at him. But they are losing a lot of their set place guys. They're losing lots of the people that head the ball because everyone's dropping like flies. I don't think they're going to be that great at set play. That might be good for João Pedro, to be fair. He could end up being primary target for a lot of these set pieces again.
I mean, it's a weird one, isn't it? Because the manager said, and I don't know where we're up to with this, but he's done a lot of talk that I don't think I've seen much people really talk about, to be honest, where he said kind of basically Pedro is going to be the 9 in the tougher games, which is what they've had recently. And I'm looking, it sounded to me like he was looking for an opportunity to play one of these younger guys as the centre forward and get Pedro in the position that we all hope that he'll be in. Which obviously pushes Enzo back a bit, which I don't think it makes a necessarily huge difference to Enzo because he always makes those runs anyway, but it does obviously change his responsibility. And at the moment he is, I mean, this is the sort of hope of someone who doesn't own Enzo, because he's getting that one big chance a game, isn't he? He's not getting volume, but he's very good, like you say, at making those runs and getting those chances, and he's getting a sort of a big chance basically most games, and that's it. So you would hope as a non-owner that you'd hope both as a non-owner and a João Pedro owner that they get a striker in for some of these games and go for it a little bit, because it's boring watching Chelsea at the moment, isn't it? Basically, João Pedro's, what do you call it? He's just I've forgotten the word, but he's just put there to basically occupy people and not actually do anything himself. And then it's just these late runs. So I would hope. And I've not seen any. I've just checked Neil's teams; he's not updated yet, so I don't know what the predictions are going to be when the teams update. But I would hope that Chelsea play a centre forward, and that we do see a slightly different position from anyway. And especially, I would hope that as a non-owner of Enzo, because it is a little bit scary.
So with the rest of what we got here, there's a bit of an opportunity just to pick out anything that we've perhaps not discussed so far. I mean, one thing that stands out to me is that you can see why this is, and this will come on to Baker's team in just a minute. Why it's such a popular bench boost week, because of course you got really a couple of games with very, very low projected goals for both teams. So Burnley, Leeds being one, Sunderland, Wolves are another. Bit annoying if you own Alderete, because obviously a little bit of a risk there, which we'll talk about in a minute. But yeah, lots of that, and some interesting kind of bench dilemmas for some, because I mean, if you take, for example, everyone, and quite rightly so, this is a DEFCON guy you don't need to skip in Senesi. But that's just quite a tricky ask to play him this week, actually. There is a bit of a debate. It's something I hadn't really thought about a great deal earlier in the week, and now I'm thinking, well, Rodon's right there. and in my case, I still own Romero, but we can come on to that in a minute. But I don't know, what do we think? Is that up for discussion, Senesi?
I think it's up for discussion. I think it's up for discussion, definitely. But I do think the context of when we're looking at these projected goals and doing this stuff is after international break, stuff does happen. It does get weird sometimes. It's a hard one to predict. So yes, I'm bench boost active, but part of that's almost like an absconding of decision to an extent of like, God, it could be any of these 3 of these 5 here, and it's really difficult to work out. If you asked me where would I go with them, well, what I've just done is I just picked the same 3 that I picked last week, and then I can be like, well, they're my 3. But if I really had to look into it and say, would I start Rodon over Senesi, I probably wouldn't. And we talk all the time, me and Adam will say, let's look for the 40% first. Lock your 40% in, you're playing them. They're done. And I think there's a really big conversation to be had around when it's somewhere between 20 to 35, is there actually going to be any clean sheets? Because what you're actually saying there is there's almost a 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 chance. So if we equate that to points for those people, you've got an expected point somewhere between like 1 point, because you get 4 points for a clean, 1 point, and 1.5 points, something like that. Well, if you know that this guy, like, do we know Senesi's going to get DEFCON at Palace? I'll back that all day long.
Oh, yeah.
So would I just start with the guy that definitely gets half a clean this week?
That's exactly what I was going to say.
And I probably would. I'd probably still do that, because I don't. I've got Rodon. Do I think Rodon's going to get DEFCON at Burnley? I'm not convinced of that one.
Yeah, that's it. That's what I was going to say. And I think there was again, small sample alert and all that, and I think it was shared by Planet FPL or something. Just looking at teams and Oh no, maybe it wasn't actually. Maybe it was Trigger or something like that. Because there's a new feature on Scout for free that shows like teams against and DEFCON conceded and stuff like that. And again, yeah, it's just a small sample, but it actually looked like a really good fixture for DEFCON, potentially Crystal Palace versus Bournemouth. Can't remember the exact details. But yeah, you were looking at it and just thinking, I mean, Senesi's already a total beast for that. And I basically just thought, you know, there's not much we can hold on to this week, but I'll hold on to a bet there that, yeah, he's basically starting with half a clean sheet, which is big. Just that game could go either way. Anything could happen in that game. Crystal Palace. But again, Leeds. I mean, it's one you could play around with. It's absolutely fine to play around with. I mean, Leeds' defensive numbers have been really good. They've been pretty ridiculous this season so far.
Play 3 DMs.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Exactly. Is Stack like? I mean, like Stack and what's the
Longstaff.
So you got Stack and Longstaff. Like if you said, oh, you've got a midfield of Stack and Longstaff, then you're like, that is pretty stodgy. And then you're like, oh no, they play in front of Ampadu.
Oh yeah,
they're your twin eights. What? like they're it's like
Even Calvert-Lewin, to be fair to him, you know, in terms of his defensive work, you know, he wins a lot in the air. He holds the ball up well. He does all the stuff when the pressure's not on in terms of finishing. Does a lot of the other stuff. But yeah, they're like, I'm just looking now, and because when you look at their individual game stats, because when they played Arsenal, they lost like 5-0 or 5-1, didn't they? And they conceded like 3 XG. And I'm not saying take that game out, but even with that game there, they're like 6th in the table for expected goals conceded.
I think they're my view is they're miles better than the other two Pro teams.
Yeah.
That's my view. Sunderland have got some points in the bank, but their schedule was incredible. Their fixtures have been as good as you could possibly get.
It's quite interesting as well to see, because a lot of people I think are going to adopt a 4 at the back this week, probably more than you might initially think. Someone like Ndiaye against a Rodon is a little bit more of an interesting question, isn't it? So I think that's a bit more of a close run thing as opposed to Senesi. So that's quite an interesting one. Anything else anyone wants to pick out here before we go on to teams? Because I know that a lot has been kind of gone on. I would be interested. I will come to, if we got nothing else, I will come to Baker for Spurs, because there's a couple of questions I want to ask him about while he's here. But anything you want to pick out, Danny?
Can I ask if you owned Haaland and Salah this week, would you have any temptation to captain Salah?
I always like that sort of thing. You know, I'm a guy, as you know, who likes to sort of back a justifiable low-owned captain. But I don't think there'd be enough for me this week. I think it would be too much just in terms of everything that we see. And I'm more positive on United than everybody else seems to be this week as well, in particular. Again, like, it's just such a funny one. You know, Amorim, isn't he? And again, we were superb there last year under the same manager. 2-2. We were probably the better team. And that was when they were playing really well. That was when they were league champions easily, and it doesn't look like the same stuff functioning. So I'm low key, sort of like, we're so unpredictable. But that's the thing; it's unpredictable. Like, I'm not going in there though expecting us to get hammered. We're just not that sort of team. Like, I always expect us to kind of pull something. That's the weird thing with Amorim. Kind of expect us to pull something pretty good out, and we've got good players and good defenders. So it's too much for me, and you know, there's just too much turmoil there. Yeah, and obviously City are at home to Everton. So what would you?
Me, no. Like you say as well, I do expect Man United to score. So you start to work it through, and you're like, well, Sesko could score, Ekitike could score, Isak could score. They're free strikers. They score, he's going to have to do more than a penalty to get any bonus. If Bruno scores, he ain't going to out. He's not going to out baseline Bruno. You know, if he scores, Boomo is pretty similar with, you know, the set plays and stuff like that. There's loads of guys in this that I'm like, they're really, really good at bonus. So therefore do I think, even if he scores, is it potentially like a 7-8 point goal? As opposed to last season, you used to see it all the time, didn't you? He'd score, he'd get the bonus, sometimes get the clean as well. All those little things which suddenly turned your 7-pointers into 11-pointers just with one goal. He did that so often last season. I just don't see those things happening anymore. Whereas Yeah, I just assume that Haaland will brace. I just look at it and just he'll brace because it's Haaland.
It's possibly quite a big loss for him as well. No Grealish, Everton. He's such a big
Yeah,
outlet, isn't he? He's such a big,
huge.
huge outlet. I mean, he's just so good on the ball and holding the ball up and changing the kind of momentum of the game and the sort of, just where the possession is and stuff. So it's a big loss.
So would we assume that they play Dibbling right wing and Dyer left wing, and Dewsbury Hall comes back in centre midfield?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Or maybe stink it up a little bit more. You could play Dewsbury Hall on the left and keep and die on the right. Don't play Dibbling. It seems wild to play Dibbling and die at Man City, but
yeah. So no, sometimes you just, when it's so hot, you just got to get on it and stay on it, and you just got to ride it when it's hot, and it's just that's where it is at the moment. The guy's just ridiculous at Haaland. Everything's right about him. It's weird because it's not quite as, City are not as attacking, are they? They're not quite the same outfit, and it's all sort of through him. But
where did I see? Someone said what we have to think about with Man City is that Man City are playing like a promoted team. They're playing like a promoted team. You know, when like a Pookie or a Phillips would come up, do you know what I mean? In a promoted team where suddenly it'll be like, let's just make sure we get it to the guy that can put it in the net and we'll be okay. And it's almost like that at times. Like, it's mad to say it, but when you start thinking about the number of people that we're talking about in this Liverpool team, even if we're moaning about them, but the number of guys that we're mentioning, when we're talking about the number of guys in the Arsenal team, and then you go to this one and it's like, just get the ball to the big guy because he's insane. And it is a little bit like they are playing like one of those promoted teams that have got a star striker and it's just feed him.
It feels like, it's felt like this for me for a while, for a good few weeks, and it's probably obvious and it's a kind of silly thing to say, but I don't know. It feels like he's a bit out of his comfort zone, Guardiola. The whole league has obviously shifted in terms of style of play, and it feels almost as if he's been forced to shift, and he doesn't really know where he is at the moment or what the team is. I mean, I know they're doing okay and they're doing quite well, but it feels to me almost like Pep's just surviving a bit. I mean, he's winning games against much worse teams 1-0, and he's like that afterwards. He's and he looks so relieved, and it looks like such a struggle for him.
We're definitely, I think we've seen over the last couple of seasons more of a reaction than necessarily a leading the way. Like, it used to be, we used to start seasons and suddenly it would be like, what's the new trick that Pep's going to teach us that then everybody else will do? Now it feels like everyone plays their hand and he does not play his hand or just carries on playing the hand he was playing, and then suddenly he flips it. So there's obviously they've got the most points out of anybody this calendar year, and I feel like maybe we're seeing a switch.
It's exactly it. It feels more reactionary. It doesn't feel like he's in his comfort zone at the moment, Guardiola.
Yeah.
And maybe there's also an element of kind of just like waiting for Rodri to be okay and to be back to his. And that's almost
Marmoush and Shirky. You know what I mean? It's not just that. It's like trying to work out this weekend who's going to play around Haaland. It's difficult. Kovacic is back. So that will make a difference. Kovacic's back, Marmoush or Cherky, one of those comes back. I think it's suddenly a very different game.
Just a quick cheeky Spurs question before we move on to teams, and we'll start with your bench boost in just a minute, Baker. But I'd be interested to see how you feel about Spurs at the moment and for this particular game. So there's quite a few managers, I suspect, who maybe have one or two at the moment and considering their future FPL-wise. I mean, on that fateful wildcard 6 decision, I remember I had Rodon and Richards in place at a time, and then decided to go with gut and went for Romero and some other guy. And that didn't work out very well so far. So defense looked a bit shaky, or not.
I think we're still a very early way, a very, very early way in our progress, but our points are well above where we should be. There is this stuff where I've noticed it already, where people are saying, "Oh my God, look at they're massively overperforming their XG." Any team that in 7 games has 4 own goals. Like, we've had 4 own goals. We've scored 4 own goals. He's going to overperform their XG. Like those are all 0.00 goals. Yeah, and if they don't be own goals, then if somebody else touches it, then suddenly, oh, guess what? We'd have had more XG. Like, it's a very difficult thing to start. I think my big take, and probably my sort of regret a little bit, is I don't think I valued Kudus as high as I should have valued him. And everything I've seen since the interviews you start to see with him, just the way that he is, I don't think he's going away. That's my feel on it. I feel I've probably, I went Chevy Simons for, again, I was only doing it because I knew I was going to wild card the next week, so I only went in 1 week. But Kudus, I can think people are going to start getting a bit twitchy on the fixtures looking forward. I'm not sure whether you need to. I think he's taking a huge amount of corners. He's one of the things that I've been reflecting about set plays is the number of times that teams actually exploit the fact that you can kind of choose which corner side you want to take it. Like when the ball goes over, you can choose to virtually now, can't you? It's not like previously, oh my God, that must go to the left, it must go to the right. So it's when people say 50-50 on corners, it's not quite that way. Is Kudus is taking more corners than everybody else. Yeah, Rice is taking more corners than the right-sided guy for Arsenal. There might be also nuances in terms of the pattern of play, that the ball goes out more on one side of the pitch and all that sort of stuff. But people aren't just 50-50. He's taking, it's like Rice, and then really it's him in terms of assets out there that are taking the most set plays. I still don't think we think of him as a set play monster, but he is a set play monster. And he's going to score goals. He's only scored 1 goal so far. That's the only thing. Like he's got a crap load of points, and he's only scored 1 goal.
I think. Sorry, go on, Rich.
Okay. I know. I was just gonna. I'm tempted to sort of be glib and say that we don't talk about him in these parts for obvious reasons. But you reminded me actually that I'm pretty sure our mutual friend Ivan, who of course is a big star on Above Averages, is it The Process? It's called The Process, isn't it?
Oh, the international
break pod, which you can still catch. It's fairly fresh, isn't it, really? So you can still go back and watch that. I'm pretty sure he benched Kudus at Leeds, didn't he? That must have stung, because I did say, not you should, because he's not the kind of guy who would do what you tell him or anything like that. But he didn't bench boost and I did, and we both had kind of strangers on a train scenario where he told me not to and I said you should. And
it was cancelled it last minute. Yeah, we were under the impression he was, and then last minute just took it off, unfortunately.
It's harsh. But go ahead, Danny, sorry.
No, I not much to say other than I was just, I just think with Thomas Frank, what I've seen so far, how I've observed it is, I hope it stays like this for Baker's sake. I hope this is just not a temporary thing, but he's just come across to me as such a calm and sort of experienced leader, and he's like comfortable in his own shoes. And I really like the way he's come across, and the videos that I'm seeing with the players and stuff. And he's had this real clarity of message, which is so important as a leader, especially when you're going into a mess, which probably was a mess after Ange, to be quite honest. I know that, that's how I would imagine it, for various reasons. And I think that's why he's had to go in with such a clear set of messages and goals and start from a base. And we've seen it all season where his message has been physicality and clean sheets, basically. He doesn't want the players thinking about too much. He's not got to the point yet of thinking about attack and the kind of nuances of the play that he wants. He's had to start at the real base and get a fresh team of players that are motivated and are fit and want to play for him, and that are focused on getting clean sheets and being physical. And I've loved it, because I've heard him say that message, and he's obviously communicated with just as much clarity to the players, because I can see it on the pitch. It looks so crisp, and it's just like the first stage for them. But I just think because that's been the focus and it's been so clear, and that's what we've seen, good, much better defensively and much more resilient. And they've looked, I said a few weeks ago where I felt like they were jumping out of the screen at me, Spurs players, because they looked so much fitter than the opposition. It was that game, was it 2-2 when they dominated someone? I can't remember who it was, and they ended up getting 2-2 out of it. But, I think a function of that is a player like Kudus, because he's so talented and so good, he only needs a baseline rise like that, a baseline focus of physicality, motivation, a good defense behind me, and you can let him go.
Yeah.
So I expect that to continue for just thinking about this now, just after what Baker said, in a similar way, because of what I see him, how he's made up as a player. And B, you could argue that you probably should just get better because once they do sort out these basic messages and the defense, if it's still going this way, they're going to then start to focus on, because Kudus right now, as far as I can see, in a very simple way of analysing it, is playing like this, as I say, despite the only focus being clean up the mess, stay, defend
exactly.
well, and you know what I mean? And he's doing that despite that being the only message.
Yeah, he's already got 30 odd points, but when we haven't really functioned at all. And it's hurting, isn't it? Like, let's be fair. Like when he hauled against Leeds, you were like, well, I noticed that. Like,
I know. I had no idea that he was like 40% EO, like at any rank. At any rank, it was like
owned. Yeah, I mean, it's big owned. Like everyone, I haven't seen anybody on Game Week 8 wildcard even consider it, talk about it, look at it like it's not even in the equation, because they're seeing like, but Villa at home, I think is an unbelievable fixture. But they're just going to look at the fact that you've got the Chelsea, Man United, Arsenal, you've got away at Newcastle, you've got home at Liverpool over the next. But you're like, a lot of these are at home. Chelsea and Man United are both at home. The away Arsenal, away Newcastle, but he's got so many avenues to points, and he's just comfortably the best player on the pitch for us by miles. And like I say, I don't see. I think yes, fixtures might say that they're not as good as they were. There's still plenty of good ones.
It's also worth saying that he's got a bit of a history with big games as well. You know, I distinctly
100%.
remember him. He scored at Man City away a couple of years in a row as a West Ham player, and obviously we don't get a result there generally. And I think he came to people's attention for a British audience, English specifically, first when he scored a brace away at Anfield in a European game for Ajax, I think, as well. So he does like those, you know, those kind of moments, those opportunities against big teams. So I don't think he'd be put off at all by that. I know that's
and like he is. There's also that sort of man. But one of the interviews I saw was actually with Semenyo talking about how Kudus is the big dog. like he is the big dog. Like from the Ghana guys, he's the one that he waxes lyrical about how good he is, and you're like, we've all got Semenyo in your team. We've all got Semenyo in our teams, right? And this is the guy that Semenyo looks up to. Do you know what I mean? As the king, right? and he'll feel that. Like he sees the amount of attention on there that Semenyo's out there. He'll know that. But there's no AFCON for either of them. They'll just be ploughing and playing all these games.
Oh, did Ghana not qualify? Okay.
Ghana don't qualify, mate.
Yeah.
You could ride those Ghanaian boys till game week 38. You know, is Semenyo and Kudus. You can have them both.
Yeah. No, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, because I think people are still gradually bringing AFCON into their own sort of attention sphere. I know that Minte's the Gambia, I believe he plays for. I might be wrong about that, but he's fine as well. They didn't qualify, so there's a few there. I don't think any of us have got any Cape Verde players, have we? So it should be all right.
No.
There you go. Let's go on to have a look at. We'll skip that for now. I'm meant to go to Baker first if we can. There we are.
Oh, what a scene from the Born Identity that was.
Yeah. I thought I'd chuck you in this week.
I've seen that for a long time. I've seen that film about 50 times.
Nice.
Anyway. I mean, I guess you're good to go there, Baker. Is that fair?
So I haven't, like I say, have not touched a single player from last week. This is the exact same team, exact same caps, exact same vice. Just all I did was press bench boost active. So therefore, I feel that by not pressing anything, I am immune to the bench boost police. They can't say anything about it. They can't change my players in and out. We just go with what's there. So yeah, I'm there. Pope in goal, Bernard Senesi and Gabriel at the back Semenyo, Gordon, Saka, Reinders, and Sarr, Haaland and Gyökeres, and then benches Dubravka, Richards, Calvert-Lewin, and Rodon. People hate that I have got a striker versus a keeper on my bench. People hate it. They hate it. I love it. I love it. I just look at it and go, what do we need? I want one thing. I want one of two things. I want either Calvert-Lewin to miss 12 shots, which all go straight at Dubravka, and I get a double digit from Dub because Calvert-Lewin can't score. Or I want a brace from Calvert-Lewin, and then I don't care what about Dubravka. Just one of you guys get me something, and I've beat Richie.
It won't be too difficult. And I mean, that sounds. I mean, all of those scenarios that you explained are perfectly plausible. Maybe the brace is a bit much, but it's perfectly plausible. Actually, do you know what? We were asked in the chat for a 20-minute bit on Dominic Calvert-Lewin. We haven't got that, and we're not going to give it. But do either of you want to wax lyrical for maybe a minute?
There's been a lot of. I've only sort of dipped in and out of X and all that, but there's been a lot of controversy about him, it seems, hasn't there? I think I don't agree with most of it. I mean, you just don't know with Calvert-Lewin, do you? He's one of those ones who he does need a good psychologist. He does need help because Calvert-Lewin is kind of a great player despite his own psychological foibles that are pretty significant. That hold him back a lot. It was only really Ancelotti who managed to sort of get rid of that for however long he did. This is a guy who plays in the Premier League, and by the way, comfortably looks like one of their best players. To be honest, when he's on it, because he is, and so he plays in the Premier League despite his psychological issues, where he does think too much. He's exactly the opposite of what I was sort of saying when I was talking about Woltemade before in terms of what you're looking for in a player. He is someone who thinks consciously. He's very aware. It's just a mode of thinking, which is not ideally suited to a footballer unless you're stable or unless you've got a kind of psychologist or whatnot. I just see... I mean, obviously, the biggest worry with Calvert-Lewin is him getting injured. That's the biggest worry. So put that to one side. If he's not and if he's fit, he, on a bad day, he's a very good player. He's a handful to defend against, and I have no problem with him on a bench.
Romero and Van der Ven found it incredibly tough. He caused us a lot of pain, and one very good save stops a goal from scoring. But like I say, he will miss some. All you want on bench boost is a chance, and for me, he offers me a chance on bench boost, and he offers me another chance in game week 9 because he's home to West Ham, when I don't think I really want to play Sarr at Arsenal. I'd play him home to West Ham over play Sarr at Arsenal, especially Sarr at Arsenal between the Carabao and European game is fine. I think he creates another option where I don't necessarily use a transfer. I just play him if I need to roll someone out. But I like, despite my handle being 3-4-3, I like to try and find 5 midfielders into my team, and that's what I want to try and continually find. If anything, if I'm looking at stuff here, I'm always just thinking, well, Gyökeres down to one of these 7 million guys, and suddenly I get a bit more to spend in midfield. That's all I'm thinking. Or I get Timber. Do Gyökeres. Yeah. If I take Gyökeres down and take one of the defenders up to Timber, then I'll probably play 4 at the back more often. I just don't see that I'm gonna. I just don't value forwards, quite frankly.
Yep. I think there's something lovely as well about a player like Calvert-Lewin in the squad that you created for the wild card last week, where you do know when you want to use them, don't you? Like in your scenario, it's obvious when you want to use him, which is this week, next week, and then you're never too fussed about him being, your 8th attacker, or maybe even he won't even necessarily get beyond second on the bench a lot of weeks because you've got the DEFCON guys and so on.
Yeah, I think a DEFCON guy will go in front of him most weeks.
And it's only $1 million as well. It's only $1 million more than Dud, isn't it? It's like he's 5'5", 5. Yeah.
And he could become really good You know, he could become really good. He plays for a really good team, and he is a confidence player, and he's going to keep playing the good. You know, he's going to keep getting minutes as long as he's fit. I mean, again, always the caveat that he could get injured, but that aside, he's going to keep playing because he's very good. He does a lot for the team, and if he just gets a goal, I mean, he always gets the chances. We know that his XG is always good. Every shot at the moment is like at the keeper. Every shot is down the middle because he's so consciously aware, and he's just not got that confidence. Nothing's in the corner.
Yeah.
You know, he probably buries them all in training, but it doesn't take a lot. He gets such big chances. It doesn't take a lot to get that one goal, and then he can easily get a couple. I mean, Leeds have been really good, like Baker just said, in terms of even when they were against Spurs, they've been really good. They've got really good players, and this guy is nailed number 9. Fine by me. And again, like you say, so you could have the option that you might want to play him if he starts doing some more stuff. So yeah, it's nice. I mean, it's a really nice bench boost. I'm trying to remind myself of the pictures because I can't see it that well on the. But it's very nice.
And also, you've done well, Baker, to avoid, because so many people have got issues, and they got Lyle Foster injury and Alderete maybe injury, and Enzo is a little bit of a debate amongst people as well whether to bring him in.
No, I'm going to just argue that completely and say that's not unlucky. If you wildcard in game week 7 and you pick South American players to bench boost in game week 8, that's a skill issue. Like, that's a straight up skill issue.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that. Just reminded me about Enzo. There's a lot of talk about, is it Enzo, whether he's fit? It is Enzo, isn't it?
I'm sure he is fit.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say,
if you're like going, I'm going to do that in game week 8, like Alderete versus Rodon, then like I was immediately since the World Cup, I was up at Alderete, and I didn't even realise it was Paraguayan. And then someone, but he's playing Paraguay, and they're off to Korea and Japan, and I'm like, out.
Yeah.
See you later.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, like, almost as a separate point, like, if people are thinking about Enzo, I think he's probably absolutely fine. Like, I don't. The weird thing is that apparently he was planning to come home, because what I was going to say was, like, when a player in South America doesn't play, they usually always have to say there's an injury, because otherwise someone's getting kidnapped. You know what I mean?
But it's not just one international break, is it? It's international break. It's international break, and then it's 4 game weeks, and then it's international break again.
Yeah.
Like, do I want to do that twice for a 4.0 defender? No.
No, exactly.
Why would I want to go through two international breaks for it? Like, I don't. That's to me opening yourself up to a potential world of pain. It might work out. You know, it sounded like it was positive about him playing Wolves this weekend, but the risk was there. Big Joe Rodon was not the risk.
Yeah, and the only caveat here, obviously, is that, and I've not studied the individual players, but there's always a little thing, which is what I hope you get through for your sake. There always is a little thing of unknowns sort of appear, don't they, after international breaks, and something could just get thrown up
somebody
where
just gets benched, somebody just doesn't turn up. All that stuff definitely happens. But yeah. The deliberate move for this was double Palace and double Leeds, and you don't play the double Leeds, don't play the double Palace definitely at Arsenal in game week 9. Can definitely play double Leeds at home to West Ham.
Nice. Okay, let's. I think we're good there. Looks good. I think we should do better than the 8 points I got for sure.
Yeah.
Danny. So
sorry, go on.
No. You take the floor if you don't mind doing the audio readout as well.
No, I was just still thinking about Baker and just thinking biggest thing you're hoping for again is a Newcastle clean, which would be difficult against Brighton, wouldn't it? But man, that would be lovely if you get it again.
Yeah.
Really like Pope as a keeper, by the way. So maybe we talk about that. Maybe we talk about that with your team, Rich, when you're thinking about.
I kind of forget about that. I've got double Newcastle defence again.
Yeah. I'll assume we'll talk about Timber maybe when we get to Rich's team quickly, but so I'm reading it out. So I've got Raya in goal, Semenyo, Lacroix, and Gabriel. I've got Bruno, Paqueta, Semenyo, Reinders, Gyökeres, Pedro, Haaland, and then on the bench, Dubravka, Njai, Goodmanson, and Anderson. It's been that long since I've looked at it. I'm actually I'm having to read the players who I've got myself. Pretty straightforward for me. I've got like choice. I want to just. I feel like I'm in a position where I want to have more power in terms of transfers. I mean, I've only got one free transfer. Not many people have only got one free, and that was a function of obviously wildcarding in 4 and not having Gabriel on the wildcard. Wildcard. Yeah, wildcarding in 4 and obviously having Salah still. So I needed 2 transfers to get to Haaland as a plan, and then get Gabriel in. So one transfer, and I just feel vulnerable, and I don't like feeling vulnerable. And I've got money in the bank quite a bit. What is it, 1.5 or something like that?
Yeah, you said that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I could do like any move in terms of the popular moves. I mean, pretty much any move. I think, and obviously, I could get Sarr, I could get any of these guys, Enzo. But it's just one of them where it looks right for me to sort of see it out. And I don't even, it's information at the moment in terms of who you want to sell when you do make those moves, because people like Sarr will come in for me, or probably Sarr, and whether it's, I don't know, some other midfielder. I'll probably miss the window on Enzo. But in terms of information, it's going to be good to get to see what Paquetá is like, if we get much out of it. He's a really nice one to just have, isn't he? That as a wildcard 14 player that no one's really got. And I do really like what he looks like on paper.
He's done really well to keep pace. That was the one thing I noticed with your game with World Cup 4 was despite going early, there's definitely some sort of lesson to think back on this one. It definitely was. I was like, when you said you were going early on World Cup 4, I was like, because you hadn't had the greatest opening few weeks, did you? Effectively, and then you went early on Wildcard, and I was like, crap, if this doesn't work out, then you're also going to be behind. But I'm looking at this now, and I'm like, you're not behind at all.
Yeah, no, it did go very well, and it's funny you say that actually, because I hadn't, and maybe I don't let that sort of thinking come in too much, so I can be, which is quite good actually thinking about it. Can be quite sort of single-minded. I didn't let that fear creep in at all, because it could have gone really wrong to be in a really bad position and wildcard. You've just got to be so decisive in these things, haven't you? And I was, thankfully. So, but I talked about it in the last pod, but it was 2 weeks. I was so glad it was an international break, because it was 2 weeks to get rid of so many biases and really try to think how I thought other people's teams would look in 2, 3, 4 weeks, and not have people like Wirtz and Watkins and stuff. So, yeah, pretty happy with it. But it's a bit survival mode for me now, in terms of transfers. So I need to take every opportunity, I feel like, to roll a transfer. As soon as you've got 2, you're in such a stronger position, so much stronger. Yeah. I've got 1.5 in the bank, which is nice. So, yeah, I mean, a really aggressive move is I could get any of those guys, obviously Sarr and Paquetá and anyone. I could even get, I don't want to sell Bruno now, but, so... It's not one that I'm not excited about this week. I don't have players like Timber that I'm really excited about. I've got defenders that I'm not particularly expecting much from in terms of clean sheets, but they're good players. I'm sort of secretly hopeful for Lacroix that he's going to emerge as like being maybe the best Palace defender again. I hope, because I think about players who are features of what game week 4 wildcard. Like hardly anyone's got Lacroix unless you wildcarded when I did, for example. Same as no one's got no one's got Paquetá unless you wildcarded when I did, really, not really. So I quite like those players that are features of that wildcard. And obviously Bruno Fernandes is the other one who's I can get excited about, or want to be excited about, because everyone's selling him. So it's just one of them for me where I'm very much looking forward to rolling the transfer and having 2, and then feeling more comfortable next week and feeling like I'm in a much more powerful position. And I've got the opportunity to do that, because players like Sarr, for example, who I might really want, who is it next week? He's got a tough fixture next week, hasn't he? Yeah. So it feels like it sort of buys you a bit of time, even though I do really like picks like Sarr this week. You've got to like Enzo. Reinders is another one that you want some information on. You just want a little bit of information on, just with a few little early subs creeping in. I still feel good about him, but there's a lot of things that I want to see, and I still want to see about Bruno, because Bruno is obviously the most exciting, and I'll finish in a second, but he's the most exciting for a number of reasons, not just because of what he can do and what he can be in his fixtures and how good I feel about him as a player, but it would take so much for anybody to transfer Bruno Fernandes in now. No one's going to go there. He could brace this weekend against Liverpool. No one will bring him in. Because what they're going to do, sell Saka for him, sell a really good midfielder. People are so, they've made their mind up on Bruno to such an extent that it's going to take so much to pull it back from that at this point. And obviously the price point as well. So I obviously hope I get the right side of it. He could easily just blank the next 3 or 4 because United could just be really crap and even worse than we thought. Of course, that could happen. But it's quite exciting because if he could bang 2 or 3 games in a row and people still won't bring him in. So, yeah, I'm not excited about this week, but I'm excited about having 2 transfers next week and saving up a bit. So,
yeah. There's nothing that you could do there with one. Well, no, there is stuff that you could do with one, but it's not worth it, as it really isn't worth it.
Nah,
much more powerful.
No.
All right. Okay. Different style of cropping, Danny. I know you've been critical of this, but I'm going to read it out anyway. So in goal, Raya, in the back line, Gabriel, Senesi, and Romero has been very unkind since he joined. Reinders, Semenyo, Fernandes, and Minte. It's my little cheeky pick. Pedro, Haaland, who's captain, and Gyökeres, and then on the bench, Dubravka, and Jai, Rodon, and Anderson. So what have I got? 3. I think of 3 transfers, and I think it's 0.4. It's nothing much. So you can't really do much in one anyway. It's a bit of a funny one because I know we all do this, right? It was a crap week before the international break. Not really bad, but because the bench boost didn't go too well. 8 points. It was one of those ones where you could have instantly been like, oh, I know 3 moves that I want to make here. I'd like to kind of turn it upside down and do things and change things around. A lot of people talk about Saka, and that was the thing. And as Danny knows from last week's pod, it was went down a bit of a rabbit hole of watching extended Arsenal highlights over and over and over again, into a point where I did a Woltemade version of my own, where I went into a kind of psychosis where I kept seeing Timber entering the box at all times and that sort of thing. So simple answer is, I know a lot of people in this situation would think, well, okay, there's an opportunity here perhaps to go for one of those midfielders. So Enzo or Sarr. Sarr's definitely going to come in. There's almost no doubt about that, but it won't be this week necessarily. And the reason for that is simply I'm not 100% sure who I want to sell yet, to tell you the truth. So there is a little bit of an issue there. I'd rather, I think, given that difficult game next week, I'd probably just rather have the uplift of the 2 games to make do with the 3 midfielders. Well, the sort of 3 from 4 situation plus Semenyo. So players like next week, Njai's got Tottenham at home, isn't he? It's an okay game. Minte's got Man United away. It's all right. It's all, those kind of things where I'd rather make the move.
Sarr at Arsenal, though, aren't they? They're better than Sarr at Arsenal.
Yeah, exactly that. So it's just not worth probably doing that move now. Better to kind of stack that up. The moves that I mean, we didn't talk about this explicitly last week, did we, Danny? But we sort of guessed from each other's kind of whims of reading, of watching Arsenal highlights and that sort of thing. But I know that I'm certain that I'm going to be bringing Timber in. It's just whether I do it this week or next week or the week after or whatever. And you know how it is. You lose that kind of impetus, or so you need to be brave for 1 week. Otherwise, you just won't do it, and that sort of thing. And because I have a reasonable amount of transfers, I'm still pretty keen. My wildcard draft during 6 had Pope in it for the whole time. So there's that horrible thing where you think, oh, fuck's sake, sorry, why didn't I just stick to it, and that sort of thing, and go with that. Romero, was in and out of the team and that sort of thing. So those are 2 spots that could easily be left alone. I think this week they could easily be left alone because they're okay fixtures. You can argue Rodon maybe even deserves a starting place above Romero, that sort of thing. Pope in of himself isn't great this week, right? It's okay. I've got Minte against him anyway. So there is just a little bit of a debate as to the necessity of it. It's just whether to pull that this week or not. White has not been spotting in training, so there's a tiny little thing that people could have used as an excuse, including myself, to kind of wait on it a bit further. So it's just a question. I think I'll leave the midfield for now. I'm pretty confident about that. I don't see the value in doing it now. I've never been I haven't been on the Enzo thing. I don't know why. It's a bit of a black spot for me, but I'm going to wait on it anyway. So it's just whether Raya goes to... It would be Raya to Pope, Romero to Timber, and it's just there for the long term because I like it a lot. I think in the long run, it will make a difference. This week, honestly, toss a coin. I'm not sure whether it's worth it. So it's whether to do it this week or next, really. So I'd be... I'll take your opinions. And actually, like I said, there's even an argument for Rodon playing as well. So, yeah, what do you think?
Well, I can see your dilemma because there's never a right time to make that move, is there, objectively?
No, that's the thing, isn't it? And 4 next week, obviously, does sound amazing.
Yeah. It's the sort of move that I would have made this week if I was you a few years ago, for sure. And you get more and more, the more you play the game, you get more and more objective and optimal, and you think, oh God. I mean, one thing I will say is, and it's just silly, but if ever there's a Raya game to actually get more than 6 points, this does feel like one of those potential ones. It feels like, tight, small pitch, he's a great keeper, could easily get a few saves. That's also my just hope talking, because I'm not going to be able to make that move. It's also easier for you, maybe, because with Romero, I don't know. I still think Romero could end up being amazing. I know the fixtures maybe aren't great the next few, and you're sort of feeling a bit down about them because of what the points you got so far.
Yeah.
It's a bit more difficult for someone like me who's got Senesi and Lacroix, who maybe just feel a bit more solid in terms of ever making that move. You can never go wrong with rolling a transfer and getting more transfers. I would never be in that sort of frame of mind of thinking, well, I've got 3, or I'm going to have 4, I'm going to have 5, I need to use them. Although like Baker said, we have got a lot and we've got to use them.
For whatever good swings. Game week 12 is a good time. Like as much as it's you've got to use them in game week 12. If you've got 3 or 4 at that point, you're going to be in a really strong position. And there is also the fact of, we do have to use them all at 15, but you could use 5 transfers in 15, do a mini wildcard in 15, and then actually you don't need to use any of those transfers in 16, and you keep the 5. So it's not like you have to exhaust them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, bottom line is, loads of transfers is always incredibly valuable. It always makes you incredibly stronger. That's just how you have to think about it. Simple as that. Not how are you going to need any? How many are you going to need? It's just, in my mind, it's better to think, more simplistically, that you're just always in a really strong position to have them. However, it is one of those things. The game is so tight these days. It's so difficult to get that edge and make that difference. And it is one of those moves. And it could go either way, of course. Swapping those moves isn't necessarily the best thing to do. Raya could end up getting loads of points. And, we just don't know. You're just making a bet. It is really difficult. And you're making a bet. And then Timber could just miss a game or, get subbed off early. So it takes a lot of bravery to do that, but I don't mind it whenever it is. I don't, because I'm very tempted as well, because I really, really like Timber, as I've said before. I really like Pope for various reasons. More than Raya.
I'm fairly blinkers on about it in terms of unless something ridiculous goes wrong or injuries and whatever, it will happen. It's just a case of when. I think there is, as you say, there's not a huge impetus to do it this week. I think that's the only thing for me. But I think it was that thing earlier. You see I was like, oh, White's not in training. You're like, oh, it's just another little thing, even though it's completely innocuous and doesn't really make any difference.
Yeah.
But yeah,
my advice. One of the advice I often think that we group transfers. Now you have to kind of group transfer to an extent in that you can't do Timber before you do the Raya Pope one. Yeah, you have to do that to be able to do those ones. But one of the things that I will almost always do is, even sometimes if you like to do transfers like quite late at night, don't you? That's the pro way to do it. We do it before we go to bed, so therefore we've taken all the most information in. There was no price change that could happen, so we do it before we go to bed. But normally, if I'm making a double transfer, one of the things I've tried to do quite regularly is just do the first transfer first. Just do it like now, or do it like tomorrow as soon as the press are done, and just do that first one, and then stare at it, and then go, do I really need to do that? So if your first thing is really that, what you're actually saying is you prefer to Pope to Raya.
Not this week, but yeah.
I don't know about that. I genuinely don't know about that. I know that I might say those things, but They didn't win last year at Fulham, and they didn't win the year before at Fulham.
Okay.
Marco Silva is incredibly good against the big teams. He fucking loves that battle, and he loves that battle at home. I would. There would be no surprises from me if Fulham turned Arsenal over this weekend. No surprise at all. I don't think it's the 43% clean that we've got from Arsenal there. I don't think that's anywhere near that. Like, I'm very happy to have my guys on those ones, but I would just be like, well, do I really like that one? And then how much do I really like Timber over Romero? I don't like that hugely.
Actually, do you know what? Whilst we're on this, we have to have this conversation. How tall do we think Timber is?
I think he's 5'9".
Really?
I already know because I think you told me, or I looked. So I think you told me before, so I'm not going to spoil it. But he spoiled it. Baker spoiled it anyway.
No, I don't think he's that small, but he's I think it was, what was it? Is it 179 centimeters? So
he's 5'10".
what is
A
that?
bit more than that.
5'10",
5'10", yeah.
Smaller than I thought. Yeah, it's a big lad.
I was very disappointed with
Big presence.
What is a fullback? No,
It's got a good
wasn't
jump
playing centre back.
Yeah, I think it doesn't jump out this week, does it? As much as I do like the move generally at some point, it doesn't jump out this week. And I still think there's information to be gained on Romero and Spurs, to be honest, as well.
Yeah, I'd want both to work. Do you know what I mean? I'd want to be like, bang.
That's the thing.
So when I asked you to ask it in isolation of, do you like Pope better than Raya? You were like, I'm not so sure. Well, that to me says I'm not sure I want to do it.
Yeah, that's fair. I think it's a much easier move to justify next week, by the way. I know that they're still playing a really hard team, Crystal Palace, for example, Arsenal. But with what's Pope? He's at home to Fulham next week, isn't he?
Is he?
Pope at Newcastle.
Yes.
You've got loads of Newcastle. And Romero has obviously got Everton away, not quite so juicy. So it's a little bit.
Then he moves to the Chelsea, Man United, Arsenal trio.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Pope does look good later.
Cool.
It's just Pope gets you saves. I mean, Raya doesn't. The floor always feels higher with Pope, which is nice. But who knows? Like I say, we don't really know yet in terms of what that's going to look like. I do like just before we go. You've got a bit of a decision, haven't you? Minter versus Njai, I suppose.
To tell you the truth, I haven't really given that a great deal of thought. I think it's just because I know this is very bum logic, but I have Minte. Not many people do. Yeah, it's one of those ones.
Yeah,
and I expect them to score. Do I expect Everton to score? Yeah, maybe not.
Yeah.
So that's all I got. But I'll probably leave him.
I'd play him.
I think that's it, isn't it?
Yeah. As time ticks on, I always feel more and more guilty, thinking Baker's given up his forgetting.
Oh yeah, of course you have. You're quite right.
Well, I assumed we were going to spend 2 hours, and then you tried to tell me we were only going to spend about an hour, and I was like, really?
Yeah, right.
And then that didn't happen. So
I don't know whether anyone else has got this situation, but when I go through to the other room, not only have I missed Traitors, we've missed the extra program after it as well. So
I forgot we've got that.
I don't need the extra.
Yeah, it's not quite so worthwhile this time.
It's been good though, hasn't it? It's been pretty good so far. I like the carrots and stuff. I like the guys.
Yeah.
Cool.
Is it only 2 episodes a week?
Yeah, just 2.
It's weird, isn't it? Like I expected to be more episodes a week.
I think it's because it's the celebrity one, so it's just they tend to do it a bit. I don't know. There won't be as many weeks, so maybe they just eat more out of it. I suppose. I don't know.
Yeah, they have more time off to swan about and be treated and pampered and that sort of thing. So yeah. Okay, cool. Well, first of all, if you're still with us, after all this time, thank you very, very much. That's very kind of you. Thank you, Baker, for your company this Thursday evening. And I know everyone knows you. They should do anyway by now. So if you don't, would you just do me a favor and remind them where they can find you and what you got on at the moment? Because there's lots of extra stuff, isn't there? Patreon, Ivan, all sorts of things at the moment.
Yeah, so above average FPL, we the normal would be we'd also be podding about this time on a Thursday night where we'd do our teams. The main pod is a Sunday evening live stream, 8:30. Let's go through the weekend games. other than that, yes, we have a Patreon. We do. There's paid membership where you can, be in the Discord and do all the games and stuff that we play. But even if someone wants to just be a free member, what that enables you to do, we post lots of stuff there where it's easy for us to just stick out what I would say, I like to call it like lots of unfinished products, which is basically the fact of I'll just screen share and talk about some stuff that I've been looking at, chuck it on, do some stuff. And if you're a free member, you get that straight to your emails and all the rest of the stuff. So all those places, Baker FPL 343 on Twitter, Above Average
Nice
FPL
work.
on Twitter, all the rest of it, stuff.
We'll so it's all in the descriptions of the video as well. So if I'm like I said, I'm hopefully everyone is already aware, but all the links are in the description below. And to finish off, someone in the chat has been watching Babe Station apparently. So if you've been doing that whilst watching us, that's a very peculiar mix. But
Perhaps he's referencing our looks.
Could be. A challenging. Whatever you're up to, a challenging one of those.
He's had us on mute.
I would suggest.
You could have modelled. I had the delights of 3 different cardigans before you came on that we looked at. So
yeah,
that would have tipped anyone over.
We'll have the orange on next week, and then charcoal the week after.
So
for those
really
who
you don't go rust. You don't just say it's rust because.
Oh, I suppose it is. Yeah,
that's the technical description for it. I looked it up, mate. But yeah.
That is very fashionable sounding.
I think when it's no one ever just says orange, do they? Really? They'll use some. They'll like have something around. They'll call it rust or what's normally if like those like rab coats and all those ones where they're orange, like a burnt orange. Oh, it's a burnt orange coat. They never just say orange. So it's burnt orange or rust. It's never just straight up orange. So.
There we are. Cardigan chat. You're not going to get it anywhere else. Oh, and just for Danny's benefit as well, Nikolai has said he really enjoyed the opening part with Woltemade. So the naked Woltemade section has gone down very, very well. So that's good news. Okay, cool. I should leave it there. Thank you, gents, for your company this evening. And we'll see you all here around about the same time next week, hopefully with news of Baker's Bench Boost success. Enjoy your game weeks all. See you soon.
Cheers, boys.
Nice one.